Hello and welcome. You are the first one in. How are you doing this early morning? There we go. Alright, well, I think we're going to go ahead and start. Today we are going to read some stories that were submitted to me on Discord and Reddit about paranormal encounters that people have had. So, we'll get to that in just a moment. Soon as I get everything sorted evenly. As you can see, I'm in my Halloween costume with my fangs and all. The caps were a bit hard to get to stay in, but they're managing. Okay, I think we can go ahead and start now that we've got everything all set up. So, for the first part of the stream, I'm going to read people's paranormal encounters that they've submitted to me, and talk about experiences I've had myself as well. And for the second part, we will have people join in voice chat and weigh in on different paranormal topics, such as what they believe about psychics or a parallel universe or things like that. So, while we wait for everybody to come on in that's going to come in and join the voice chat, we're just going to go ahead and read some of the stories. This first one comes from someone called Andrew on Reddit. He has a Twitch, actually. You can check him out at Slaughter Camp. So his post says, "So I've been doing some spirit box investigation at the house I share with my fiance. The last 2 nights we've done this together, we have discovered that there are 4 spirits in our home. Bob is the calmest one. When I mentioned that we spoke to a spirit named Bob in the house, my fiance's cousin mentioned that Bob is her grandfather who passed. His name is actually Robert, but everyone called him Bob. Mind you, we share the house with her cousin and uncle. Knowing that Bob isn't a threat, I've gotten the other names of the 3 spirits left, being Toby, Eric, and Melissa, I believe. The female spirit, I can't say for sure if that's her name. Anytime I've tried to reassure the name, I don't get a response, and whenever I'm about to, it's like something is stopping her." Just gonna adjust the music real quick. There we go. She does indeed like to laugh, as she's done so 3 times in the last 2 days. Anytime I hear from her, she is giving a yes or no answer with occasional other sentences. Toby is, from what I understand, a good spirit, although I've seen him as a dark shadow next to our bathroom, and this was earlier today while I was home alone with most of the lights out. The main part of the story I'm getting into now is Eric, so upon using the spirit box about 20 minutes ago before the post, I had asked multiple questions, but I'm going to get into the more interesting ones. One of the questions I asked after I got his name was if he was a good or evil spirit. I got no response, and then asked if he was a good spirit. I get a response this time, and he says yes, very clearly. Since I know the demons can lie and try to trick you of what they really are, I decided to ask if he was lying to me. He responded once more, saying yeah. I then was able to confirm that he is the one spirit that is a demon. Things started making sense by this point, as early today, when I was home alone with my spirit box on, I noticed our kitchen chair was knocked over, and I took a picture of it and sent it to my fiancée to show her. It also explained why I always felt uncomfortable and watched in our garage that we rarely enter now. I had asked him about both these things, even trying to make sure he wasn't the shadow figure in the hallway leading to our room. He had told me that he wasn't the figure in the hallway, which led me to assume it was Toby. He did reply to me that the garage is where he hides at. Most of the talk I had with him after was him saying, "Come," the female spirit as well. I was trying to convince me to go into our garage. At the time, though, it didn't cross my mind that they were mentioning it. I was trying to ask where they want me to go. I didn't get any straightforward response about the question. I was told leave me alone or go on multiple occasions today and tonight. Upon ending my spirit box session, I went to the kitchen and grabbed something to eat. I ended up feeling some weird sensation on the left side of my collarbone, almost like something had touched me or digged into me softly. I go to the restroom to comb my hair, and then I check my neck and person for any kind of marks. I ended up noticing there was a fingerprint on my collarbone. It almost looked like the size of a young male's hand or older. I wanted to capture a picture, but when I went to do so, the marking was gone. All I know now is that there is something evil here, and there is more spirits than me or my fiancé thought. I'm going to continue to investigate when I feel it's the right time. I'm hoping to get some good evidence eventually. That's actually kind of creepy. I don't know how many of you are familiar with spirit boxes. They're devices that sweep radio frequencies rapidly. I believe they can range anywhere from 5 stations per second or higher, depending on the setting you put them on or the model of the spirit box that you have. And it's thought that much the way that spirits are able to manipulate electronics or electromagnetic energy fields, they can manipulate the frequencies and the static to be able to speak. And so you can hear voices. And while skeptics are quick to say, oh, that could just be radio that you're getting, keep in mind it sweeps 5 stations or higher per second. So the chances of you getting a consistent word or even a sentence, a string of words, a full coherent sentence, is very unlikely. So investigators continue to use this as proof of contact, I guess you would say. So this second one is from someone who wants to be known simply as Casey on Reddit. She believes that, or he believes that something is following them. Their post says, "When I was a kid, in my childhood home, a dark energy possessed my dad and tried to murder my mom and I." Already a bold claim right there, but weirder things have happened. "Growing up in my new home with my mom and grandma, paranormal stuff happened all the time, especially with footsteps and apparitions being seen by guests. An ex of mine was scratched even. Now I have bought my own house and things have just started here, just like at the old one. I saged the last house, had paranormal investigators out, and had all kinds of stuff done, and now it's starting again at my new house. I have a feeling this thing won't be satisfied until it drives me crazy. I think it's good to note that last night my dog was in her cage whining, and I stood in front of it and told her to stop. Then she lowered her head and growled at me, completely out of character for her, like a rumble almost, and then my head got very lightheaded and my hands went hot. I felt like I was about to go unconscious or something. As soon as it passed, the growl stopped. I had never felt that before." Casey also wanted me to add that they did a cleansing of the house a few days after and haven't had any more experiences yet. So, typically, sage is believed to drive out spirits. I was about to say harmful spirits, but any spirits really. it's thought to be kind of an unbearable aroma for them, and the purity of the herb is thought to be somewhat abrasive to them and push them out, creating boundaries. This isn't just believed by Native Americans, it's believed by a bunch of different cultures as well, which is why they'll do smudging or burn sage sticks. Also in the Catholic faith, where you have priests come out and bless a home, often not just using holy water and prayer and crucifixes, they will often burn incense that they use in churches, like frankincense and such. I have both sage sticks and frankincense myself, but I haven't used them. It was more just a gift that was given to me, and luckily I haven't had to use any yet. So, but white sage, by the way, many people are against using it, and they tell you not to use it because it's endangered, but upon researching, it's actually not endangered. It was at one point, but it is no longer, so it is still safe to use. There are different kinds of cleansings you can do, again with faith-based cleansing, like with the Catholic house blessings and stuff. You can do it with Native Americans if your background is Native American, or you believe that there is a Native American spirit that needs to be appeased. That's probably the route to go. There's also, again, sage burning, just going around and praying yourself. Something called tar water that you can use to spray in all the corners of your house. Chalk lines, salt lines, blessed prayer medallions that you bury at the corners of your property. Various types of cleansings that you can do to create a boundary, but you have to be careful, because there is a theory out there that if done improperly, rather than pushing the bad spirits out, it can actually trap them in so they can't leave. So you want to make sure to be able to push them out and then create a barrier, rather than create a barrier trapping them in. So it's always best to have, in theory, a medium or somebody who can communicate with the spirits, a shaman of the Native American tribe, if there's a Native American spirit, or whichever, to be able to make sure that the entity, whether it's a departed soul, a skinwalker, in the Catholic faith, a demon, or whatever it is in fact being pushed out. So this next story, there's actually two of them, from someone known as Tiny Mothman on Reddit. By the way, all these stories, I did ask specific permission for these stories from the author to share them, and did get permission back. So always do that. If you plan on doing any sort of podcast or stream, make sure that you do get consent from the people, rather than just going online and just reading through Reddit posts or whatever. So this is from Tiny Mothman. The first one is about a winged humanoid they saw, which I'm guessing by their username that they think it's Mothman. I have not actually read this one. I read the other post that I'm going to read after it, and there was a link to this one. I thought, I would like to share both of them. So I haven't actually read this first one yet, so it's going to be new for both of us. Okay, their post says, so a couple years back, I was living in a shabby suburb in southern Louisiana. Oh, southern Louisiana. Louisiana, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with Louisiana, who are perhaps from other countries or just other regions and you don't really know much about Louisiana, it has a very, very rich culture. There's voodoo practitioners, hoodoo practitioners, which are different, all about, gaining power or, working with dead, things like that, collecting dead. I encourage you to research both hoodoo and voodoo. It is absolutely fascinating. And people in Louisiana are very, not religious necessarily, but very spiritual. And they have French roots and Native American and definitely a lot of Southern influence because, of course, it's in the South. And all of this has kind of come together to create a really fascinating kind of environment. And not just culturally, but the land itself. Swamps, marshlands, and things like that. There's a theory that it tends to hold on to spirits and energies because of the ground content, the geology of it. There's a lot about quartz and the stone tape theory and things like that. Again, I encourage you to research it. It's super fascinating. And there's also theories about the way water can hold spirits, and just absolutely fascinating stuff. So Louisiana, I'm not surprised that there's a ghost story out of it. Again, they are very spiritual. They associate, I guess you would say, with their ancestors and their departed. Halloween is a very big part of the culture, and celebrating your ancestors, the departed, things like that. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, enough of my tangents, back to it. So a couple years back, I was living in a shabby suburb in southern Louisiana. Plenty of weird stuff happened in this neighborhood, but this probably takes the cake. It was about 5:30 to 6 in the morning, and the sun had barely come up, just enough for me to see the silhouettes of the trees. I was standing at a bus stop situated on a crossroads, with huge pine trees on either side of the road in front of me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the trees. When I looked over at first, I saw nothing. But then, what I had previously assumed to be part of the tree trunk began to move. As I watched, the silhouette started slowly spreading an absolutely massive pair of wings. Then it jumped from the tree and it swooped to the trees across the road. I saw its legs. I shit you not, it had human legs. I could easily make out the shape of knees and feet. I've been able to rule out all of the possibilities I can think of. It was definitely not an egret. The legs were too thick, the torso was too large, and I didn't see a neck. It was also worlds too big to be an owl. I'm talking the size of a man, or maybe even bigger. Ooh. JD Hugh, thank you so much for joining the Dreamscape. We are the only cure for reality. Thank you so much. We are one step closer to our follower goal. I've completely lost my space now, but thank you so much for the follow. It's greatly appreciated. Here we go. It was also worlds too big to be an owl. I'm talking the size of a man, or maybe even bigger. The closest known description I can come up with is the freaking Mothman, except I didn't see any glowing red eyes. And that's the end of that post. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the cryptid the Mothman. It's Point Pleasant, West Virginia, I think, that it originated in. It's supposedly a creature, obviously the size of a man, somewhat bigger, with large moth wings, and it's always got the piercing red eyes in almost every story of an encounter. They reportedly see him before, natural disasters like major earthquakes, bridge collapses, things like that, which I guess a bridge collapse isn't exactly a natural disaster, but disaster nonetheless. And he's been seen since, I want to say the 40s, but my information may be incorrect. It's been a long time, and I haven't really gotten into the Mothman as much as some other cryptids. I'm not sure if I believe in the Mothman or not. I'm definitely not saying that Tiny Mothman didn't see this. I don't know if it was the Mothman exactly. Which I'm guessing they don't know either, since they don't know about the glowing red eyes. Well, I mean, they do know about the glowing red eyes. I mean, they didn't see them. So it's possible it could be another cryptid. It's possible it could be, I don't actually have another explanation. If you see something as big as a man with wings fly from trees on one side of the road to the other, and it doesn't have a neck like an egret, and its legs are thick and you can see knees and feet, I really don't have another guess besides Mothman, so I'm gonna have to go with that on this. Again, I'm kind of on the fence about Mothman exactly. I haven't really read too into it. I do have a book on him that I'm intending to read soon, but I don't really see another explanation. Assuming, like I'm going to do all night, assuming that this story is absolutely 100% truthful, I think it's got to be Mothman. I don't know. Feel free to weigh in and chat. Okay, their second post is about a haunted house in their old neighborhood. I believe they said it was at the same crossroads or near, or the same bus stop or something to that effect, but it was around this same area as the first post. A few years ago, in my freshman year of high school, I lived in a somewhat shabby suburban neighborhood where abandoned houses were not out of the ordinary. One of them stood at the end of my street, right next to the bus stop I used in the mornings. When it was inhabited, a single mother lived there with her 2 kids. Her daughter swore up and down that the house was haunted. According to her, she'd hear footsteps and voices. Lights would turn on and off on their own, and doors would open by themselves. She and her family moved out of the house after a couple of months. After what happened to me, I think I know why. One morning at around 6, I was walking down the street to the bus stop when I happened to look over at the house. Mind you, every day after it was deserted, the family never put it up for sale, they just left, the lights had been off and the blinds had been closed. This morning, however, all of the blinds were up and the lights were all on. I could see straight into the house from where I stood, and I noticed that every single door within my line of sight was wide open, and the rooms inside were also lit up. At first I thought that maybe someone had come to clean it out or something of that nature, but there was no car in the driveway and the house was completely empty. I mean nothing. No furniture, no appliances, no cleaning supplies anywhere. Also, it was a pretty small house, so if someone was in there, chances are I would have been able to see them. Plus, who the hell cleans an empty house at 6 a.m? So I was already beyond creeped out. After about 10 minutes passed, I realized the bus was late, and I was stuck there next to someone or something. Or I was stuck there next to this creepy-ass house. I skipped a line. The longer I waited, the more paranoid I got. I kept glancing over the house, feeling sure that someone or something is watching me from inside. Finally, the bus rounded the corner down the street. I sighed with relief and turned to face the house one more time, and I shit you not, I saw a head duck back into a doorway as if it had been peeking out to watch me. It took all of my willpower not to scream. The bus pulled up seconds later and I practically flew up the stairs and down the aisle. You think that would be it? Oh no, it gets creepier. The bus's route made it so it had to loop back around and pass my stop again. As we passed my street, I looked out the window at the house. Someone was standing in the window. But wait, there's more. That afternoon when I got home, as I walked past the house, I saw that all the lights were off and the blinds were closed again, except for one window, the one I saw the person in. Yeah, I sprinted home that day. Ooh, that is very creepy. I'm not entirely sure that is paranormal. I mean, the first one, definitely some freaky ass is going on there. But This one, I don't know. On an inhabited street with a bus stop, I'm loath to think squatter, but it could be someone who knew the house was abandoned and therefore at 6 in the morning, thinking nobody would be up and around, was going through the house looking for copper to strip out and sell to support, a drug habit, or just because, they're on the streets, they're hungry, they need food. It happens a lot here where I live, is that if they know a house is abandoned or just empty in between movers, they will come in the middle of the night or in the wee hours of the morning and try and strip the piping and the wiring, looking for copper or anything valuable to sell. It does seem a bit risky on a street like this with a bus stop and everything, because they don't really do that here, where they feel like people are going to be watching or I mean, again, with that bus stop, it's super risky that they would even try and do that, so it's kind of a weak explanation. But it could have just been someone going through the house trying to look for anything left behind, anything valuable, anything they could strip down and sell. But if not, that is creepy as fuck. Either way, I mean, even if it was just a person, that's absolutely creepy, because you don't know what their motive is, and they're standing there watching you and being all covert about it. I mean, they could have had some pretty bad intentions to, like, mug you or worse. I mean, yeah, I would definitely not like to pass that house either way. Okay, so this next story is about a possible skinwalker. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm absolutely fascinated with the concept of a skinwalker. From what I know about it, from what I remember at least, they're these sort of inhuman entities, I guess is a good word for it. Inhuman entities that can shapeshift. They are common in I guess the Southwest is the region I'm trying to think of. Obviously, I'm sure many of you have heard of Skinwalker Ranch and things like that. They're common in Native American folklore. They can shift from human form to a wolf or coyote-like form, and there have been instances where they can take on the appearance of other people. I don't know how factual that is, or if they're thinking of a Wendigo or what. But it's absolutely fascinating. I highly encourage any of you who are interested in like shape-shifting entities or cryptids to look up Skinwalker Ranch and read about it. There's many books on it. There's many shows and documentaries about it. Tons and tons of articles, videos, photos, lots of creepy stuff out there about skinwalkers, and I am just absolutely fascinated with them. I definitely want to research more, and if people enjoy this Twitch stream and I decide to keep doing them on a weekly or bi-monthly basis or once a month, whatever, I definitely want to get into skinwalkers more and talk about, folklore about them, because it's just unsettling to say the least. Very unsettling. So this is from Death Comedy on Reddit, DETHKOMEDY, not on Twitch, sorry, Reddit, and they have a possible skinwalker stalking their home. So the post reads, "My girlfriend and I live on a ranch in northern Colorado." See, there you go. It's always ranches rural areas, Midwest, Southwest. It's always that. I think there's just something about that region that appeals to skinwalkers. So already we're off to a plausible start in terms of whether or not it is a skinwalker. So, my girlfriend and I live on a ranch in northern Colorado, and just beyond our property line is a small river with a thicket of woods on either side of it. Ooh. It's dense enough that you can't see the back neighbor's lights through the woods. Several months back, we found this spot while exploring the river. It seems to be a den of some kind. When we happened upon it, there were raccoons and rabbits strewn about and picked clean. Eugh. Quick acknowledgement, there is a foxhole near the fence, but it's on the opposite side of the property, and there is a large pile of branches which houses all number of bunnies and squirrels. That's the fox's hunting ground, not this den, which is nearly 300 yards away across barbed wire fences. Anyways, the den reeked of decomposition, but the corpses we could see were relatively fresh. The den was embedded in the bank of a river, where some concrete had crumbled in, exposing the room, which was probably used by some farmer to dam the water. We got this feeling that something isn't right, and we went back home. We hoped that would be the end of it, that we had just let our imaginations run wild in the moment, but things persisted. Now we walk our dog on the property. He is usually an off-leash dog, but something has been grabbing his attention. He continues to pull in the direction of the den. He has slipped through the fence more than once, even injuring himself on the fence to try and dig into the ground on top of the den. We've resorted to putting him back on his leash to make sure he won't try and go toward the den. He still pulls on occasion, but he's getting better. On one occasion, we had just gotten new tenants on the property with horses. While we were walking around the mound of branches, my head went into a daze and my dog began pulling lightly toward the den. We walked and walked before I realized where I was. Before I realized where I was, we were at the den. I felt nothing. No paranoia, nothing. It felt like a moth looking into a zapper light. But something shook me. A sound. It sounded like a horse on the other side of the fence. A sound coming from the entrance of the den that I couldn't see from the angle I was at. It sounded like a horse huffing, slapping its lips in the way that horses and really stressed people do. A horse couldn't be down there. There was no way. I took my dog and we went back to the house with my head on swivel. I've always felt skeptical of even this circumstance. It had to be the river making some sound, or it could have been my imagination. Until today. I was walking my dog again. He often asks to go out in the evenings as well as the mornings. This took place after the sun was well down. I would walk my husky with a lightsaber in my hand. One of the quality dueling sabers, meant to take a beating and to hit hard, but most of all it was to provide our walks light and safety. Tonight is a particularly chilly night, and the day above reminded me of some post-apocalyptic hellscape. As we approached the branch pile to complete our loop, I heard it again, the bellowing, only meters from my head, big and loud and intimidating. I froze in my tracks. I could see our next door neighbor's lights shining through the garden, and there was no horse. My dog pulled and reared, his hair standing up. We ran. I couldn't mind my dog's comfort when worried for his safety. I practically had to yank him away from running back to whatever he was fixated on. When I got back into the house, I told my girlfriend what happened. She recommended I look here for advice, so here I am. And then, they added, as I was writing this, my girlfriend went out to the car to grab a lighter, and she said that she heard something, the same thing, near our shed. We both verified during our occurrences that the horses were in their pens. This was easy as the tenant who owns them keeps a light on them all night. That's creepy as hell. Hearing a horse down in this creepy den where you smell decay and rotting and decomposition and see all manner of animal carcasses is really unsettling. And I like the fact that he was, or she, was able to verify for a fact that the horses were not near them, that they were in their pen by checking with the lights, looking around. But another thing about skinwalkers is they're known to be able to mimic sounds. Not sure I like that very much. I really don't like the idea of something being able to come around my property and mimic the sound of other animals or humans. Recently, I was watching a paranormal caught on camera show. I think that's actually what it's called, is paranormal caught on camera. And this woman was sitting in her back porch where it was covered, and they have some woods. And she had been hearing something speaking in her voice, and it freaked her the hell out. And so she was sitting there on camera, and she called out hello when she heard a weird noise, and in her voice back to her, it asked hello. And even now I've got chills. It's so freaking creepy. So I think that what they do is they like to mimic the sounds that are around them to blend in. So they were mimicking this woman because it was what was around, and so they wanted to blend in, so they were mimicking a human and learning to sound like it, so that if anybody heard it, it would just mimic back a human, and somebody would think, oh, there's people out there. And I can only imagine trying to go out there and think, oh, my neighbor's out there, and getting caught by this thing. And so this skinwalker, if that's what it is, seems to be mimicking the sound of horses because it's near their neighbors who have horses. So it's trying to blend in and make you think it's just the horses, it's just the animals. But again, he's verifying that there were no horses around and that it was down in the den where a horse could not possibly be. That's unsettling. Obviously the dog knows what's up. You know, its hair standing on end, it's trying to go there, it's trying to attack, bark, chase, always trying to pull over there and investigate and protect. And what I don't like, what I really, really don't like, is that they found this creature out in a den, like backside of the property. And now their girlfriend goes to the car to grab a lighter, and they hear it near the shed. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but anything that I hear like that, better damn well stay in the woods or I am moving. It seems to me that it's sort of taken an interest in this person, whether it's because of the dog or just because it caught their scent or was watching them when they came near the den, and so it's coming closer to investigate, creeping up on the property. I mean, honestly, death comedy, I would just say don't go near that den again. Definitely be on the lookout for any sort of tracks or prints. Try not to go into dark areas, especially near the dense woods, or that den after dark. And if you hear it by your shed, you know, I recommend getting a shotgun or a hunting rifle or something, you know, even just a BB gun to scare it off, to, you know, because I would not want that thing creeping up toward my house. I mean, Lord knows how bold it's going to get, how close it's going to get, how curious it's going to be. There have been encounters where they've seen them creeping between houses in these narrow gaps, where they've been seen on rooftops, where they've been seen peeking in through neighborhood trees and then disappearing back into the forest. And I'm just saying, be careful. Get protection. Don't go near that den again. If you can, try and talk to your other neighbors. You may not want to, understandably, may not want to tell them that you think it's a skinwalker, but just say you saw a den and you're kind of worried about a predator being in the area, and see what they recommend that you do to take care of the den. But make sure you don't do it alone. Make sure you do it in the daytime and with your other neighbors. Take care of that den. But on the flip side, that could piss it off. So you really got to examine. Honestly, if it was me, I would just move if that was a possibility, and if not, I would not be going anywhere near that after dark. I would be going out in the well-lit streets on the way other side of the property to walk the dog after dark. And I would have more protection with me than just a lightsaber, honestly. So be super careful. Move if you can. Consider taking care of the den. Consider it. But you may not want to. I don't know much about skin. I've never heard of a skinwalker having a den. I really haven't. So I wouldn't know how to deal with that. Again, it could just piss it off, or it could force it to try and relocate. Hopefully further away where there's, more little bunny rabbits for it to chase. So just some things to think about. Definitely weigh your options. Definitely be safe, be smart. Ooh, not overly fond of that. Alright, so this next one, actually next two, comes from our very own moderator, the Roving Bear. You can find him here. And, okay, I see. Sorry, my stream deck, I put some buttons out of order, but we're good. But you can find him there on Twitch. He is a variety streamer. He streams Minecraft, Sea of Thieves, Persona, whatever the number is, and he is an absolute fun streamer. Real treat. Great guy. Hopefully he'll be stopping by in the second half of the stream to talk about some other paranormal theories and entities with us and kind of give his take on these. So these next two are from him. This first one he said happened in 2018. He says, "Me and my ex went for my birthday to visit this museum and zoo she raved about for months, down in the Midlands of the UK at a place called Dudley. She looked at the hotel, a place called the Station Hotel, as it was in between both places. It was an oldish place, more like a giant bed and breakfast than a hotel, but still really nice. Skip tonight, we both do our routine and get in bed to sleep. I'm asleep when I wake at 2 a.m. and have the weirdest sensation. Basically, I had sleep paralysis, which was new for me and a bit scary, but I stayed calm and let it gradually subside. As it did, however, I suddenly heard movement upstairs and the sound of kids, young kids, playing and giggling in the corridor. That suddenly jolted me as it was 2 a.m. I crept over to the door to peek through the peephole, however. I could not see anything. That was when a toothbrush fell from the side in the bathroom despite being up against the wall and having 5 inches between the wall and where it fell. I lay in bed and listened and waited. However, nothing else majorly different happened. Skip ahead again. I watched Most Haunted on Amazon as, that kind of thing intrigued me. And lo and behold, an episode comes on from the hotel. I've actually had this sort of thing happen, and this is where I am going to share one of my experiences. Actually, I'll go ahead and share two hotel-related incidences. One was in between Boston and Salem. We were in, I think, Peabody in Massachusetts, and anybody that's familiar with Massachusetts or Salem knows about the witch trials and all that sort of thing. And so this is one of the very few arguments I've gotten into with my husband. He was asleep and I was not, because insomniac who never sleeps. That's why I'm up at 3 a.m. doing a stream 4 a.m. And so I was awake, and the hotel room had sort of 2 areas. It had the little kitchenette and living room in one area, then these sort of French double doors that opened up into the bedroom that had like glass paneling and then curtains on the inside where the bedroom was, and then there was the bedroom and the bathroom. I was sitting in the living room on the couch, and the 2 doors were closed and he was asleep in bed, and I was on my laptop just surfing memes and shit, like I do. And I heard a woman start screaming and crying and pleading, and it made my stomach churn. I thought I was going to vomit. I really did. I was super nauseated, you know? And I just felt this like instinctual need, like I have to go do something. It wasn't like I'm just gonna quietly stay in my room and call management and be like, hey, they're fighting in the room, can you go see what's up, it sounds really bad. Or, you know, even just calling the police and being like, there's a domestic disturbance and I think they might be in trouble. No, I had to go out of the room. So there I am, barely dressed, in my PJs, barefoot, key card in hand, phone in the other hand, desperately listening, going up and down the halls, up and down the stairs, trying to hear where this screaming is coming from and where this begging is coming from, so that I can help this woman, you know, pound on the door, make it stop, you know, just get her out of there. And the thing is, I couldn't pinpoint it. I could pinpoint it to a certain location where it was above me, but I would go to that location on the next floor and it was deadly silent. There was like no hint of it. And I'd come back downstairs and I wouldn't hear anything, wouldn't hear anything. And I'd hit that spot and I would hear this screaming and crying. And I thought, okay, maybe it just sounds like it's coming from above me. And so I was listening at doors. I mean, I was actually doing this, listening at doors. And I mean, if they saw me on the security cameras, I looked like a total creep. And I was listening at doors, trying to think, okay, maybe it's TV. Maybe I'm just imagining it. But I couldn't hear it from anywhere. Everything was silent, but I would still hear it in the hotel hallway. But nobody seemed to hear it but me. So I went into our room again, and I woke my husband up, and I demanded that he help me find this woman. And he couldn't hear it. He's like, I don't hear anything. And I'm like insisting that I'm hearing this crying, this pleading, this screaming and begging, like they're begging for their life, right? And he's like, I don't hear anything. And then I demanded that he call management, and we got in a big argument over it, because he's like, you know, it's probably just some people watching TV, you know, just it's so late, it's like just past 3 a.m. He was so dead tired. It was the middle of March, which is pretty much just the dead of winter up there in Massachusetts. And he was like, you know what, I'm cold, I'm tired, I can barely keep my eyes open, I'm just gonna go back to bed, I don't hear anything, it's probably just the TV. And I mean, we got into it. And he finally called the front desk, and the front desk was like, oh. But they didn't seem surprised. They were just like, you know, about it. So, I mean, I didn't hear management come. I heard that woman scream for like another 15 minutes, and then it hit like, I want to say about 3:30, 3:45, and it just abruptly stopped. And I'm like thinking, oh shit, this woman died. And I'm listening, and I wander the hotel rooms one more, I did a lap, one more time. Heard nothing. Come back to my room, wake up my husband. He can't even open his eyes at this point. He can't even like look at me. So I call management, and I'm like, you know, screaming stopped, and they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, that's not necessarily a good thing. And they're like, no, we get that a lot. And then it kind of clicked. I was like, this is a really old building. We're in between Salem and Boston, and both had a lot of history, a lot of tragedy. Maybe I'm hearing things about that. So we get home, and about a month later, I'm up again late, and I'm channel surfing, and I come across another paranormal show, and I'm a sucker for those. I like to watch them. And lo and behold, just like Cabin of the Roving Bear, it didn't name that hotel specifically, but it named that block, and in that camera shot had the hotel. And it said that people would report hearing women screaming and crying. Some reported hearing children crying. Some people reportedly heard women begging for their lives, and it was thought to be that they were going to be executed for, God knows what. Probably, witchcraft. And so that always stuck with me, especially since on that trip we went to Salem, and we went to the site. They believed that most of the hangings had happened, and we saw all the paved stones with the names of everybody who was wrongfully executed under suspicion of witchcraft. We saw the tree, we saw the graveyard, and it just absolutely broke my heart. Like, just standing there, I didn't feel creeped out, I didn't feel like paranoid or anything. I didn't feel like we were alone either, even though we were. I have pictures of it on my Instagram, and by the way, there are my social links. It's a ways back, but I have pictures of it on my Instagram, and it's just, just standing there, you could really feel just deep sadness. So the other hotel story. I went in Birmingham, Alabama to see Alice Cooper play live. I didn't know when I would get to see him again, so I paid for my brother and his girlfriend to go, and my then best friend to go with me. And that's where I got this tattoo from, his autograph signing my arm. I preserved it with petroleum jelly, and I got the tattoo like 2 days later. But we stayed at this historic hotel in downtown Birmingham that we could walk to the venue from. It had a bar in it and everything. It was really nice. I really liked it. I believe it was called the Tutwiler or something. And so there's an elevator, and it doesn't just have the front doors, it has side doors, known as the service doors. And the lady at the front desk said, don't worry about it, those don't work anymore. So, don't try to come into the elevator doors from that side, because everything's blocked off from that side, and you're not going to get out from that side, you're not going to get in from that side. They don't work, right? It goes nowhere. And except on the ground floor in the lobby, so you could come to it from the front or just the side, and that was it. Everywhere else, you couldn't go in or out those doors. So we were going up to the hotel and didn't hear anything, normal. And then not 15 minutes later, I decide to come back down to meet my brother and get him to make sure that he gets through the valet and everything and gets his parking, stub to get his car from the valet later. And on my way down, I heard knocking on the service doors when I stopped at a floor. And it was just like a stop, the doors didn't open, it stopped for some reason. And I heard knocking on the service doors, and I'm like, because it's not like a machine knock, like it's creaking or anything. It sounded like somebody knocking on a door. And I thought that was weird, but I didn't think anything of it. I get my brother and everything, we come back up, I don't hear anything, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a way down kind of thing. And so my then friend goes down to the bar to check when they open, and when she comes back in the room, she says on the way down and the way up, because she was alone, I'm assuming, she heard knocking on the service doors, and she thought that was really weird. She's like, it sounded like someone just actually knock. And I'm like, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I heard that on the way down when I was alone, but I didn't hear it on the way up when I had my brother and his girlfriend with me. And so we're like, weird. And so she, Googles around and finds that that's reported phenomena at the hotel, that people will report hearing knocking on the elevator doors. And they'll hear knocking on their hotel room doors and on their bathroom doors in their room when they're the only ones in there. And I'm like, don't like that. So skip to after the concert. We're sharing a 1-bed room because that's like all they had left. So we're sharing a bed and I'm asleep, and she's kind of tossing and turning, and then all of a sudden I have a case of sleep paralysis like Bear did. And I don't know if it was sleep paralysis though, because it felt like someone holding my shoulders. Like I could move the rest of me, but I couldn't sit up because it felt like someone's pushing my shoulders down. And then I felt the bed by my feet kind of depressed down, like somebody was sitting. And like I kind of rolled slightly with the weight, and I'm like, don't like that. And I was just stuck like that, feeling like somebody was pushing down on me and feeling somebody sit by my feet for like easily 20 minutes. And then I look over by the bathroom in the closet and I see this dark shape, darker than the darkness, just standing there. And I'm like, I really fucking don't like this. So I stayed awake the whole night just sitting there watching this thing. And at about 4 a.m., it just kind of goes whoosh through the closet into the hallway. And I'm like, done, I'm done. I sit up, I get my phone, I'm playing around on it. I'm playing with my, little apps and stuff, just trying not to think about that. Because there's not exactly anywhere for me to go. And my friend is like dead asleep at this point. Like before, she was tossing and turning like she was having a nightmare, but I was pressed down so I couldn't do anything about it. And now she's absolutely dead still, so I didn't want to wake her up. But then sunlight comes up. Let me backtrack. I was playing on my phone and I heard knocking on the door across the hall, and so I went to the peephole and looked, and the hallway was empty, and the person opened their door and looked down the hall like that and then just kind of shook it off and went back in. I was like, nope. So I get back in bed and she's absolutely still, and the sun comes up, and then all of a sudden she sits bolt right up and she's like, oh my god, thank god it's morning. And I'm like, why? And she's, were you having nightmares? And because that's what I thought, tossing and turning. And she's like, yeah, but then I woke up but I couldn't move. I couldn't sit up and I felt like somebody was pushing me. And I'm like, see, I don't like that. So I will never ever go back to that hotel. Ever. Okay. Now that we've done my 2 very, very long stories, we're going to get back on track to the Roving Bear's second story. Now he says, my granddad passed away from when I was like 11 and 12. And I asked my dad if I could stop with my Nana, as I thought she might appreciate the company for a weekend not long after the funeral. My grandparents' bungalow was a small one with one central corridor for all rooms. Anyway, night rolls in, she's asleep, and I'm in my bed on my Game Boy Color when I hear shuffling down the corridor from her room across to the lounge. She would walk normally, but my granddad couldn't for many years. Not very well, anyway. I hear the lounge door creak open, someone sit in the electric sitting chair, and it recline. I get up, curious, and head over to the lounge, lights on as I go, only to find the chair in a reclined position despite no one sitting in it since his passing. Wow. I would say that's creepy, but that's also kind of comforting. I mean, having a loved one come back and just, go back the way they were doing, shuffle down the corridor, sit in the lounge in their chair, that sort of thing. I will add 2 more stories. I know you guys are probably sick of these, but 2 more stories about my grandparents. Now, my dad is adopted. I hate him anyway, but his adopted family, is a real shitty family. I don't like them. But of all the people, my grandfather was somewhat kind to me. But he was spineless is the thing. So as soon as I was old enough to have a say, I decided not to see him anymore. And so I didn't see him for a long, long, long time. And I was in a hotel in a city north of here with my husband when I got the news that my grandfather passed away. And I had mixed feelings about it. I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Because on the one hand, he never stood up to my grandmother for me, and she's a horrible, horrible person. And I kind of fell out of touch with him, but then I also had these nice memories, so I was kind of dealing with that. And so it was a very stressful day, and my brother decides he's going to go to the funeral, and I decide I'm not. And so I get off the phone with my brother, and I'm really upset and just stressed, and I'm a mess. So I decide to go to bed, and I have this dream that my grandfather is in the hotel room watching me, and he's kind of got these mixed emotions that I'm feeling, like this somewhat resentment, this somewhat bitterness, but also this kind of feeling of like, I still love you kind of feeling. And then I see him pull out a chair at the desk that's just across from the bed and sit in it and watch me. And I mean, that freaked me the hell out, right? And I sit bolt right up, I mean just straight up in bed, breathing heavy, drenched in sweat for some reason, and I see the chair pulled out from the desk at the exact angle that it was in my dream and empty. And I know for a fact I had pushed that in because it was a narrow walkway past the desk to the bed, and I kept stubbing my toe on that damn chair, and it pissed me the hell off. I had done it like 4 times, and I'm like, I'm sure I've broken my toe. So I shoved it into the desk, and then I went straight to bed, and my husband was already asleep. So I know that he didn't pull it out. But I remember specifically shoving it into the desk because I had stubbed my toe, and it stayed there, and I was like, fine, good, at least I won't break my toe going to the bathroom in the middle of the night if I need to. But it was pulled out at the angle in my dream, and I kind of had a nervous breakdown. I couldn't breathe, I started freaking out, I kind of felt like cold water drenching me head to toe. I ran into the bathroom, and I had a complete meltdown, like a complete mental breakdown. And when I come back out of the bathroom, the chair is like pulled even further, like almost all the way across the room, and is now facing the bed, and I'm just like, absolutely not, no. And I wake my husband up, and I'm crying, and all I can get out is the chair. And so he pushes the chair back in, because he can't think of anything else to do. He's like, I don't think you want me to sit in the chair. I don't know, maybe she stubbed her toe on it again, and she's just really upset between hurting herself and her grandfather and all that other stuff. So he pushes in the chair, and he's trying to get me to calm down, but I could not sleep in that hotel room. I couldn't. Absolutely. From that moment on, I could not sleep. And if it was my grandfather, I think he felt bad about scaring me so badly, because the next night I begged my husband, and we went home, and I kind of had this dream about him, and it felt very peaceful. It wasn't a particularly long dream, it was just him standing there, and I just kind of had this sad look on his face, and then he turned and walked off, and I felt very peaceful after, a little bit sad, but very peaceful. And then I hadn't had anything happen since, nothing that reminded me of him, no dreams about him, nothing. So I think he felt bad about scaring me if that was him. So I still have mixed emotions about it. And the second one is about my Nana. That's my mom's mom, so it's my mom's side of the family. I don't like talking about this, but the night I made affiliate on Twitch, I was so happy, but an hour later, I get a text from my mom saying that my Nana, who had been very ill for a very long time, and she was in a lot of pain, and was in hospice care and everything, and I was sending her flowers like daily. She had finally passed away that night that I made affiliate, and I couldn't enjoy it. I was so broken up. It took me a long time to know how to feel happy again, but it was April and this year, and she had passed away, and until I met my husband, she was the only person in my entire life who had actually cared about my well-being, parents included. And I'm still not really over it, but I was just super distressed, and I helped my mom, the best I could. I wasn't able to go over to her house. I couldn't bring myself to do it, so my mom covered the mirrors herself, and did all the things that you do when somebody passes in our culture and religion, and covering the mirrors, stopping the clocks, all that. And I couldn't cope with it for a long time, but on the third day, which is kind of important for us, I won't go into it, but on the third day after she had passed, I hadn't been sleeping well, so I went to go take a nap in the middle of the day. I was so tired and upset, and I was a mess. And so I went to go take a nap, and I heard my husband walking in from the store. We have wood floors, and it's an old house, so it's creaky, and you can hear anybody move, even the cats. So I heard him walking around, and I thought, okay, he's gonna come down the hall. I was waiting for him to come down the hall and check on me or wake me up or something from my nap. And I felt this very, very light kiss on my cheek. I was thinking about my Nana, I was upset, I was praying, and I felt a very light kiss on my cheek. And then all of a sudden I just felt absolute stillness and peace. Just, relief. And I thought, okay, my husband kissed my cheek. But then I was like, wait, he has a beard, and I didn't feel a beard. And I also didn't hear his footsteps down the hallway or the door open. And I opened my eyes, and the door is closed, and I can hear him walking around at the other end of the house in the kitchen putting away groceries. And yeah, door was still closed and everything. And so I honestly think that my grandmother, my Nana, had come in and checked on me and give me a kiss on the cheek, and that peace that I felt afterward really confirmed it for me. I mean, I was still a mess, the next several months. I'm still kind of gutted about it, obviously, but it's been really hard for me. But that peace I felt that day really, really helped, and it was the third day after her passing, which is kind of an important thing in our culture and religion. So I honestly do believe that was her coming to check on me and say goodbye. So that's one good encounter that I've had. So I kind of hold on to that anytime that I get scared. I'm like, well, it could just be my Nana. So again, enough ranting from me. Let's see. These next two are from my brother's girlfriend, Gigglebox357. She's had a lot of weird stuff happen from the time she was young, and so have I. So we've kind of bonded a bit over this. I mean, we're pretty close already, but this is definitely one of the things we can bond over. One of our common interests, I guess you could say. So this first one from her says, I was about 12 to 13, and I was hanging out my room listening to the radio on my alarm clock. I turned it off, and it just kept going. I figure, okay, it's old and probably just having technical issues, so I unplug it. it kept playing. At this point, I decided it must have batteries in it or something, so I flip it over to take them out. It was empty. Needless to say, I was spooked. My uncle had recently passed, and his big thing was music. He sang and ran a karaoke business, so I took a shot in the dark and asked him to stop because I was freaked out. It turned off. Around the same time frame, my door kept being shaken like someone was grabbing it and rattling the hell out of it, and no one was ever there. I think the alarm clock definitely was probably her uncle. The rattling door, unless he was kind of one of those jokesters like my Uncle Johnny was, I don't see him rattling the door because that's obviously like an aggressive kind of movement. Like you're trying to scare them, you're trying to get into their space, you're rattling the door like you know what you're doing. So unless he was kind of like a jokester, always trying to scare people and play pranks and things like my uncle was, I don't see that being her uncle. But considering that we've both had experiences since we were young, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that was another attachment to either her or the family or the house. And so, yeah, I don't see the door thing being her uncle. Let's see. And then the next one says, a couple of things happened in our old apartment. One night I was alone watching TV and a shadow moved across the pictures I had on the wall. Not the wall, just the pictures. The way the lights were set up, it would have been impossible, let alone it not touching the wall. Same night, I came out of the bathroom and the door to what should later be her son's room, you know him as Ultraforce on my channel, the door to what would later be his room was open. I had made sure it was closed before I went into the bathroom. Then one day, her sister and I were hanging out downstairs and I ran up to grab something. Every single light was on and every door, cabinet, and drawer was open. I've been in that apartment that she's talking about after her son Ultraforce was born, and she ran out to go do something with my mom. I don't know if it was just to go to Walmart really quick or something, but Ultraforce was just a baby then. And I was like, I'll sit with him. It's just like 20-30 minutes. No big deal. All I gotta do is just pick him up if he starts crying, tickle his toes, wiggle something shiny in front of his face. He's happy, And so I'm sitting. He's in his room. I'm sitting in the living room. He's just laying there with his playmat, doing his thing. I think he wasn't a baby. I think he was actually just a toddler then, like 2 or 3. And he wasn't really verbal. But I heard a lot of laughing coming from his room, and I'm like, okay, he's having a good time. I'm gonna go in there and check on him real quick. And I go in there, and he's laying in the middle of his floor, squirming around, giggling uncontrollably, just like in a fit of laughter, like someone is tickling the hell out of him, like squirming and trying to cover his, sides and stuff. And I mean, just losing it, just absolutely losing it. And it freaked me out. I mean, there were no toys around him or anything, so there was no reason for him to be like so excited and so tickly and whatnot. And so I just very calmly smiled at him, and I'm like, oh, we're having a great time, aren't we? You look like you're having so much fun, just talking to him and stuff. And I pick him up, and as quickly as I can walk without freaking him out, I go to the living room. And as I go to the living room, I hadn't told Gigglebox about this, but if she watches this video, she's gonna know. This part I didn't tell her because I didn't want her to really, really freaked out. But as I was walking down the hall, once I reached the end of it, and then just as I'm about to turn to the living room with Ultraforce, I hear his door goes closed, and it was wide open, and I was like, so I really don't like that. Not one bit. And I do feel like I should add, because she had added in the message, one night my mother was spending the night at her place, and she was sleeping in the bed in my nephew's room, and she felt something spoon her, just something lay against her, and she thought, okay, Gigglebox came in and put you know, ultra force into bed with her, you know, like sometimes it happened. He would sleep with her to, you know, just kind of not cry or be fussy, just get back to sleep, you know, like little kids do. And she was like trying to tell Gigglebox, you know, don't put him in the bed with me because I don't want to roll over and, you know, because, you know, I'm really tired. And she apparently wasn't listening, so she opens her eyes and the room's dark. She doesn't see Gigglebox and she thinks she already left, so she very carefully like moves and turns over, and, you know, this is all that I'm getting from her retelling. And there was nothing behind her. No little baby boy, no anything. And so they kind of just called whatever that was Spoonie from that day. And this is from my dearest friend Hannah. She said, I was watching TV and heard someone coming down the stairs and thought it was my sister. Wasn't really paying attention, but saw something block the light from the door, turn, and go back towards Mom's room. Didn't think anything of it until about 5 minutes later when my mom and my sister came in from outside. Freaked out so bad I had Mom check the house for intruders, and there wasn't anyone there. Now, before we bought this house, lived in a very, very old townhouse in the middle of the pines. And when I say in the middle of the pines, I mean we were in a pine forest that stretched on and on and on and on, and it took half an hour to get to even a semblance of a town. Okay, it was out in the middle of nowhere, and my friend lovingly called it Murderville. And it was like the spookiest place to live. In these old townhouses in the middle of it. A lot of creepy things happened there. And I would get tapped like really hard when I was sleeping, like tapped in the head. One time I was laying in the guest room, you know, my feet at the headboard, my head at the other end, because I was going to watch a movie, but I got too tired, you know, on my laptop at the end of where the desk is. But I got too tired, so I kind of just rolled over and started dozing, and somebody got right in my face, went like a frustrated huff, and I opened my eyes because my husband was in the Virgin Islands, you know, like there was nobody there. And yeah, I opened my eyes and nobody was there. A couple of times I heard hey really loud right in my ear, both awake and asleep. The way that the doors were, there was our bedroom door, the bathroom door, and then the guest room, and then the stairs were over here. So it's just kind of like this little square, and the bathroom was in between the guest room and our room. And so the bathroom door opened up against our door. So my bedroom door was closed, and the bathroom door was all the way open when I got out of the shower one day. So it kind of made like this triangle where nobody could really fit in between the door and the bathroom door, this little triangle of space, this gap. And I thought I saw an eye in the little sliver, and I'm like, but people can't fit back there, and I'm completely alone in this house. My husband's not even in this state. And I thought I saw, you know, like an eye, like somebody watching through the crack of the bathroom door. And so I come around, and I, like, as I'm going past it, I hear my name really loud. And so I yank the door open, and our bedroom door is obviously closed, and there's no one there. I thought somebody had gotten in my house, but there was nobody there. And yeah, I didn't care for that. And shortly after we were moving into this house, my husband was sleeping at the townhouse because he was packing all this stuff into a trailer to take to this house, and I was staying here and unpacking everything. And so I was asleep in our now bedroom, and we had maybe like 3 boxes here and, you know, some clothes, and so the house was pretty much empty. And I was so sure I was hearing someone walking around and seeing a shadow on the back deck going past the bedroom balcony doors. that I had to call my mom in the middle of the night and have her come over and check this house with me top to bottom. That happened in the townhouse a few times as well, to the point where I was actually texting Hannah and Gigglebox and going around my house very carefully and very slowly with a knife in my hand and checking all the doors and windows and going from top to bottom and making sure nobody had gotten in my house, because I heard someone going up and down the stairs. I'd seen shadows. I'd heard things. And yeah, so that's happened to me a few times as well. Also, when we'd first moved into this house, I actually have a photo. I took it today because I wanted to show you guys what I meant. The attic in the hallway, there's a gap because it's not sealed properly. See, like that. So you can see up into it when you're coming down the hall. You can see the rafters, you can see everything, right? There you go, better look. You can see the gap. Not great for your heating bill, but whatever. So I was going down the hallway and I stopped for a second and I'm thinking, you know, we should get one of those little attic tent things that they have that zip and you staple it in so that you can keep the heat in and the, you know, AC and things like that, and it doesn't dissipate into the attic and run up your bill. And I was thinking about it because my brother-in-law has one, and I was also thinking about the windows up there, how often I would need to clean them, like if they got like dusty or grimy or something like that, because they open inwards so that I can clean the outside of them and then flip them back up and clean the inside of them and whatever. And I was just thinking about that, and I'm sitting there and I see a shadow in the shape of a person looking back down at me, and then it moves away and I'm like, nope, 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 nope. And ever since then, I don't look in that attic. When I'm going down the hall, I avert my eyes. I don't look up in the attic. I've had, even before that happened, I had several nightmares of someone up in that attic. Also, the first night I spent here, the first couple nights actually, I had horrendous nightmares about a shed. Just a shed, with pigs hanging, you know, like you do when this is a sensitive subject, but it is a rural area and there are a lot of farmers and butchers and, you know, people who own cattle and, you know, ranches and stuff. And so it was like a pig hanging from its feet, like you do once you butcher the pig and you're draining the blood out. But there were a lot of them, and then like I remember in my dream pushing through them to the back, and there were like signs that people had been kept, you know, like abducted, you know, like kept. And it freaked me the hell out, and I had these horrible vivid nightmares for a few days after moving in. And we had only ever come to the house from that side, from where his parents lived, but now we were coming home from the interstate and the highway, and we come past the car plant and we're going down our road, and then I see that exact shed behind that exact house. It looked like much more newly painted, like it was like recently painted, and it looked slightly different and all that. But if you aged it back a few years and had peeling paint and a few more trees out like way back in the distance, it was identical. Like you put like 2 trees in the pasture way back there and then give it peeling paint and take away all the kids' toys on the lawn, and it was identical. And every time I pass it, I still get a shiver, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell that meant. I never saw that shed before in my dreams because we'd never come from that direction. But I don't like it. But other than that, it's been mostly uneventful living here, you know. Occasionally a door will close or lock, and I'll have to go down to the basement, break into my own house because suddenly all the doors are locked when I go out to take out the trash or something. But, you know, it's not such a big deal. So, this one now is from Tortoise Tom. You can find him on Twitch at HumanBean99. Now, Tortoise Tom is Roving Bear's, I believe, younger half-brother. So, he's in this story too. So his post says, Mom and Dad had gone out for most of the night, and it's just me and Roving Bear in the house. I must have been around 7 or 8. Anyway, we were playing a game or something, and I decided to go upstairs, and suddenly the switch for the light flicked off. 100% certain I saw it physically flick the other way. Roving Bear can confirm this. I don't remember what happened afterwards, but we were a little shocked and maybe a bit scared too. It's arguably one of the most significant paranormal events that has ever happened at my house, due to the fact that Missy, the name of the ghost, altered a physical object rather than just peculiar noises. It's kind of a big deal, and it takes a lot of energy to see an object move or, a light switch flick. I don't know what their light switches are like, if it's just like a very light touch one, but mine actually have the snap, like it's hard to move. So that would take an incredible amount of energy, even if it wasn't kind of the snap switches. I'm not sure what Missy could have been trying to convey by turning off the light, other than just trying to get attention and acknowledgement. But that's definitely freaky as hell. I would not have wanted to stay in this house. According to Roving Bear, and what was kind of alluded in this post by saying it was one of the most significant paranormal events, there had been a lot more things that had happened in that house. So I think it's safe to say that there was an attachment in the house, specifically, especially if after they had moved out that there wasn't anything else that followed them. So I would say it wasn't tied to them or an object. It was probably tied to the house. I really would not have liked that. If I had been in the townhouse or even this house and I saw a light switch flick the other direction, I would have turned the other direction and left the house and never come back. I mean, obviously when you're 7 or 8, you don't really have a choice, and that's just, that's your house. You're gonna live there. You don't have a say. But nope. Nada. Nope. Don't like that. So this one is from Prestigious Monk 236 on Reddit. I actually have their Instagram they would like me to share. smoothandbold.art. I actually did take a look at it today. They have some pretty amazing art on there. I really do like it. So this is from Prestigious Monk 236 on Reddit. They start off by saying, disclaimer, not a dream, I was wide awake. Sorry for all the fidgeting, my sock turned around and it's super annoying. So, they go and say, this morning I stayed up late studying for exam. It's 5 a.m. and I lay down. I'm tired and facing the wall. In front of me on my bed, I have a book about chest level. Suddenly I feel an energy around my legs. Kind of like the sensation you get when you're near something that radiates energy. I kind of get that, in one of my old college apartments, we had the fuse box by our bedrooms, and every time I passed it, you kind of just get this sensation, it was just uncomfortable. And I've come to find out that's electromagnetic energy, EMF coming off of it. It's giving off electrical energy, it's giving off, and this is something that ghosts are said to be able to feed off of and manipulate. It's how they get their energy and things like that. So that uneasy feeling you get in places with a lot of magnetic energy with exposed wires or a lot of lighting or heavy equipment, or just going past fuse boxes or something like that, that sort of feeling. If he was feeling that, or she was feeling that, then that kind of lends credence to it being an entity, because they're said to feed off of it, be able to manipulate it, kind of, I guess, operate within it. So it would make sense that they're feeling the same thing. So that immediately right now tells me that that's lending a lot of credibility and a lot of evidence to support that it is paranormal. So, let's see. So, kind of like the sensation you get when you're near something that radiates energy. Soon after the sensation, I feel it. I'm being pulled down slowly. I'm terrified. It's a few minutes until I fidget and sit up and gather the courage to look down and around the room. I see nothing and lay back down. Again, the sensation. I notice that I'm moving because the book that was at chest level is now closer to shoulder level. At this point, I'm trying to calm myself and to reason with what's going on. I'm not superstitious, but I keep up with lore. I have a mirror at the foot of my bed, which is supposed to be really bad placement in Chinese lore, so at that moment, I get up and move it, because I don't know what else to do. I lay back down, and yet again the sensation, but this time I'm being pulled at an angle toward the book. My heart is racing, and then I feel the energy move around my entire body. I try to fight it, and when it hit 6 a.m., it stopped, and I dozed off. This isn't the first time it happens. This is the second time. The first time was about 2 weeks ago, same time of day. I don't know what to make of it. Note, I've only been in this house for 3 months. My room has the attic entrance in it. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack. So it has enough energy not only to make you feel that energy come in contact with you, but to pull you down the bed, and then also to pull you at an angle. So I would check the room and see what could possibly be feeding this thing energy, whether it's an overabundance of appliances, an overabundance of, like, if you have a circuit breaker near your room. Also, if you're brave enough, I would check that attic. Like, something is amiss with that. Hey, Guitar Lilin! No worries, no worries. You missed a few stories, but you can watch the VODs, I guess, if you're willing and interested. We're just discussing this last story where someone got pulled down their bed. Yeah, I would definitely check out that attic, see if there's any items that may have been left behind by a previous tenant, or maybe the owner, that could be tying whatever is, I guess, harassing you to that house, that room, that location. Maybe if you find what was left behind and acknowledge who it was, or acknowledge that their things are there or something, then it will feel like it's gotten the recognition it needs to leave you the hell alone. But on the flip side of that coin, some people have found that when they've... Oh, thank God, it's just my cat. Some people have found that when they have unearthed, like, old photographs or old belongings, it's only exacerbated it. So you definitely have to think carefully about that and figure out what you want to do. But wow, that's the second time, and it's the same time of day. Honestly, I don't suggest this often, but if you are feeling brave enough and you have the ability to do so, might want to do an EVP session. You know, have a little voice recorder, ask some questions, pause for it to answer, play it back, see if you can catch anything, so you can figure out why it's bothering you, what it's trying to tell you, what it wants, so that it can stop. Again, on the flip side of that, opening up a line of communication with any entity is risky. It could encourage attachment. it can open up to more activity. But I mean, obviously you haven't been, not obviously, I don't know that you have, but I'm just going to assume based on this post that you haven't been opening up a line of communication, you haven't been, breaking out the Ouija board or anything like that, so clearly it's doing it anyway. So at this point I'm inclined to be more of the mindset like, what have you got to lose? It's already trying to yank you out of bed. It's done so twice at the same time, so maybe being awake at that time that it usually tries to, jerk you out of bed, sit there with a voice recorder and ask it who it is, what it wants, why it's trying to bother you, and what it's trying to accomplish with that. And then just trying to set some boundaries, saying, I live here now, this is my space, I'm alive, my energy precedes yours, therefore, this is my home, this is my room, and I would like you to not touch me. I would like you to not harass me. I would like you to move on or keep to yourself, just setting some boundaries. Again, if it is a stronger entity or something with malicious intent, it may see it as a challenge and be pissed off. So again, you've got to really think about what you want to do and kind of weigh the pros and cons about it, and be mindful that to everything that you think has good intention, like asking it what it wants or going up in the attic, there is a flip side that could make things worse. So just some things to think about. But again, if it's got enough energy to pull you out of bed not once but twice, at this point I'm inclined to say, what else have you got to lose? You've only been in the house for 3 months. If you have not bought the house, if you are just renting, then I would lean more toward, an EVP session and going in the attic, because you don't own that house. So if something gets worse, you could maybe try and fix it. And if you're unable to, notify the owner and move out. Look for another place and leave. Just pack up and go. But if you own the house, I would be more hesitant to establish any sort of line of communication or going up into the attic and seeing if you can kind of suss out the entity or find any of the previous owner's belongings, or anything that belonged to this, I guess, spirit, for lack of a better word, to see if that's what's tying it here. I would definitely think about that very carefully, and also just be very careful. Absolutely, having a mirror at the end of your bed is not a good place, not just in Chinese lore, but also in a lot of lore in my culture. Having a mirror at the end of the bed, or any facing the bed, is bad. Also, having your bed point toward the door so that your feet are pointing toward the door is also bad, because in my culture, it's kind of like they always bring, when you pass away, they bring you out of the room feet first. So that's kind of like a thing we don't do, is we don't have the bed where your feet are pointing toward the door. So if that's happened, I would consider rearranging your room, put the mirror so that it's not facing your bed, make sure that your feet aren't pointing toward the door. Definitely don't put your bed under the attic access. Definitely don't. Put it away from the attic, as far away as possible. You definitely don't want to sleep under the attic. That's kind of a no-brainer. I'm sure you've already thought of that. And also, if you do open up a line of communication with this entity, whether it's an EVP session or going up in the attic or what have you, also, I do not encourage the use of Ouija boards. Let me just put that disclaimer in chat. I do not encourage that. because it's different from a voice recorder, and I'll get into that in a bit. But if you do open up a line of communication, I recommend putting a mirror in your window if you have a window in your bedroom, but not facing inward, facing outward to the outside. It deters, again in my culture, entities from entering in, because as soon as you open up a line of communication, that kind of is like putting up a neon sign above your head saying open for business. Anything in the vicinity that wants to communicate will think, oh, they're communicating, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna get my 2 cents in, I'm gonna communicate, this person's willing to talk and I want to talk. So if you do open up a line of communication, if you do want to go in that attic, I highly recommend putting even just like the smallest mirror, like a little pocket mirror, in the window facing out. But now onto Ouija boards, why I do not recommend them. Because with a voice recorder, it's just talking. It's catching the things that you can't hear with your own ear. With a Ouija board, this is why people are skeptical, because they're like, it's just a board, it's a children's game, it's a piece of cardboard, they manufacture them and they sell them in Walmart, True. It's a piece of cardboard up until you use it for communication. When you use it for communication, you are inviting an entity to speak to you. Now, if you've ever used one, you know that you have to keep your hand on the planchet, that little thing that points to the letters. And the reason for that is, rather than just sitting there and observing it moving on its own, the reason you put your hands on it is because you are lending it your energy to be able to move it. You're saying, you need energy to manipulate an object, take the energy from me to move this around and say what you need to say. That's why your hands are on it. That's why you have to be touching it. That's why when you see people freaking out, like with the replies they get, they pull their hands off of it and it stops moving, isn't just because they may or may not be manipulating it with their hands, but it isn't just because of that. It's because they are breaking the contact. They're breaking the energy. They're saying, don't use my energy to move it. They're saying, I'm not giving you any more of the energy in my body to manipulate this, to spell out your message. So the moment that you communicate with an entity, you are putting your energy into that board, into that entity. And that object ceases to just be a mundane object. It becomes a tool of communication holding your energy. And not just holding your energy, but the spirit needs to put something of itself on it, like a trace. It has to come in contact with it. I won't say physically because it doesn't have a physical form, but it has to come in contact with it to be able to use your energy and spell out. Think of it as, I want to say something to you, but I can't talk. So you put your hands on the planchet, putting your energy into it and into me, and I put my hands on it, therefore leaving a trace of me on it, and I'm using it. We're both putting ourselves, an aspect of ourselves, an aspect of our energy into this object. So it ceases to just be a mundane piece of cardboard, which yes, it was, just a mundane nothing. And it ceases to be that, and it starts to be an object that holds energy, that has an attachment with the entity and has your energy in it. It becomes a thread of connection between you and whatever wants to communicate with you and whatever is communicating with you. Same thing for, haunted dolls. Why is it haunted? Because it has the departed's energy in it. It has a piece of them in it. It's kind of almost like an object possession. Same thing with haunted houses. Why is it haunted? Because the entity is tied to the house. It is tied to that physical aspect of house. It is tied to the structure. It's tied to something within the structure, even maybe just a certain room, or this is why you have trigger objects and haunted houses. It's the same concept for Ouija board. It is a physical connection between you and the entities that want to communicate and are communicating. So I do not recommend that. When you have an EVP recorder, think of it as someone standing across the room and having a conversation with you. There's no physical connection. They're already speaking to you. You just don't hear it with your own ear. All that's doing is making it so that you can hear it. So it's not like a physical thread of connection, as it would be if you were touching a Ouija board and the entity was coming and contacting you through it. So I don't recommend the use of Ouija boards. And to further get my point across, if you've noticed that if you've done any sort of research with Ouija boards, if you've done any sort of watching of paranormal shows where they've used it, you will often see people making their own. Some people make it out of like a piece of paper, some people write on the floor with chalk, some people... I even saw a man on video who had taken a pizza box, okay, and he flipped the lid up and he wrote on it in Sharpie and used that for a Ouija board. Again, why skeptics are like, oh, you know, it's not a real thing, is because they can't get past the fact that it's just a piece of cardboard. They mass produce it and they sell it as like a board game in any store. You know, you can get it at Walmart even, for fuck's sake. I saw it there not long ago when I went. Yes, it's true, but you take any object like a pizza box, a Ouija board, a piece of paper. I've seen somebody use a bell jar with a dandelion in it, you know, so there's no oxygen, and say blow out the dandelion. If you're here, you know, blow out, you know, all those little things if you're here, you know, as a means of communication. And it's the same principle. It's an object you use, a physical object that you're putting your energy into and asking them to come into contact with as well, therefore imprinting some of you in it, giving some of your energy to the entity, and having them imprint on that object. So it ceases to be a piece of cardboard. Hell, you could communicate through anything, and if it's a physical object where you're physically touching it and they're physically coming in contact with it, it becomes a tangible link, and that's why I do not recommend Ouija boards, and that's why I do recommend voice recorders and EVP sessions over Ouija boards. So now that I've had my little rant and my little explanation, let's go ahead and move on to our last story. Actually, it's not even a story. Hey, that was a good segue. This is by Peter Laska on Reddit. You can find his Ouija board transcripts on peterlaskahome at .wordpress.com. Now that I've said my whole piece about Ouija boards, and I'm going to throw up that disclaimer again, do not condone it, take no responsibility for it. This person has been communicating via Ouija board with a spirit or spirits in his home for a very long time. He's told me that he's he's told me that he's gonna update it today, so it's gonna be updated. And okay, good. That was just a typo. I want to make sure I wasn't given the wrong link. He has so many transcripts of Ouija board sessions that he has had with this entity or entities in his home. I'm going to share my screen with you and show you some of them. Most of them are handwritten. Well, they're all handwritten, but he started doing videos, so you can watch his videos instead of having to sift through all his transcripts if you're curious. But they're a bit unnerving, and I don't really... Some of them are a bit unnerving, but we're just going to go and pick and choose randomly through and just read some of the things that he's written in his notebooks, his little notes that he's taken from his sessions talking to this entity that he calls Mary. And he says there are other spirits involved and he denotes them, so we'll be looking at that as well. Also, let's go ahead and see. Halloween is in 6 days, 19 hours, 7 minutes, and 49 seconds in this time zone. Alright, so let's go ahead and switch over here. You can now see my screen. And we're just gonna flip on over and read some of these transcripts, which honestly I find incredibly unnerving. Anything with Ouija boards I find incredibly unnerving. So let's go back and check this out. I'm going to read this all to you. It's a bit long, but it'll help us make sense of his transcripts. It was requested by someone that I post the notes I take during my Ouija board sessions. I have created this page for the posting of that data. Sometimes my notes are neat, other times they're sloppy, and there's no particular order to when they are neat or sloppy. You should know that in recent times I am way sloppier than normal because I am now filming my sessions and no longer need to keep a written record on paper other than for me to write down the spirits, Mary's, messages. And for cases now where I don't film my sessions, those sessions are short and I quickly afterwards write a short synopsis of the session on my Facebook page. That means that I rely not very much on just my notebook written record anymore. With regards to my notes, anything with a green M next to the writings is usually exactly what Mary has written out on the Ouija board. There were times when I tried to contact spirit other than Mary. Those are labeled O. In browsing through my notes, you should know that at times, but not that much, I get an answer as a yes or a no. And then I write out the meaning of the yes or no and attribute that to Mary. I do that because not every question I ask is written down. I try to have conversations in the moment with Mary. It is those times when the words attributed to Mary aren't exactly what Mary had written. You should also know that many times I favor asking yes or no questions. That is because after realizing that there is a strong case to be made that I am really talking to a spirit named Mary, I decided that it would be best moving forward in my interviews with her to not waste her energy. Upon me asking her, she said that it takes much energy for her to communicate with me over the Ouija board. So I hope you enjoy browsing through my notes, but know that some data will be redacted. Trying not to sneeze here. Also, know that I am presenting the data in no particular order. Sorry, all this is a lot of work, and I never dated anything until I started filming. I can remember, though, that I first started talking to Mary around October 2017. Please also keep in mind that these notes are just a piece of my sessions, so they may seem incomplete. They are. Mostly, my hope is that you find it interesting to see the sentences and phrases Mary spells out. As I've already stated, mostly, the sentences attributed to the spirit Mary is verbatim what she has spelled out. But I didn't yet state that for the O notes, all are exactly what was spelled out to me. They are. If you have read my books, know that in these notes, that there are occasionally conflicting data regarding what is in my notes versus what is in my books. That is because either I, Mary, or both made mistakes, and then afterwards I had to dig deeper in my interviewings to get clarity on them. Sorry, mistakes are just part of the process. Really, there aren't that many, though. There's one part of my notes where I had asked if the Anshar were real, and she answered no. It is possible that was a mistake I made when recording the data. I know that I went back to that question many times, and Mary has repeatedly confirmed that beings called Anshar are real, meaning she says that they exist. I have no idea what Anshar are. According to her, they are fourth dimensional and never evolved to the fifth dimension. Humans on Earth do. So real quick, we're gonna Google what the hell that is, because I have never heard that in my life. So, also spelled Ansar, meaning whole heaven, was a primordial god in the Babylonian creation myth, Enuma Elish. his consort Kishar, which means whole earth. They were children of Lahamu and Lamu, the grandchildren of Tiamat and Apsu. I've heard of Tiamat. They in turn are okay, so this is like a god, but let's see. Master of air and water appears every 1,000 years. Interesting. So it seems to be a specific entity rather than beings. Very odd. Let's get back to that. Aside from mistakes happening occasionally, which cause conflicting data, there are times when I introduce Mary to a topic or term and she doesn't know anything about it, but then afterwards she seems to have taken the initiative to learn about them and later is able to converse about them. The topic of rainbow body from the Tibetan culture and religion is an example of that happening. Anyway, you should know that what is in my books are most accurate regarding any conflicting data. I should also say that there's data in my notes that I didn't put in my books on accident. I skipped the information without meaning to. So if you're really getting into my books, it would be good for you to also read my notes here. Okay, so now you can click any of the numbers with hyperlinks which are below to start browsing. Each number represents a page of my notes. Some pages are better than others. I hope it doesn't look too much like chicken scratch to you. So we're going to refresh to make sure that we're completely up to date. Because he did say he was updating, and I think he did. Because I don't remember it being at 417, but it might have. So let's go ahead and start with the very first. Mary book. At my very core, I am a spark of divine, an aspect of the purest, highest energy. Does my soul have a mind of its own? Did I incarnate with divine intelligence and divine intent coming into earth with a life plan and higher guidance? Do I have a soul archetype? And then Mary. This is not a phrase I know how to translate to you. Is my soul a fragment of the totality of my divine energy? I think that is one way of interpreting the vastness of spirits, Mary says. Interesting. Okay. Is there an aspect of me that comes from and remains connected to the celestial realm during my life on Earth? Don't see anything here. Is soul consciousness eternal? Yes, according to her. Was strong, it looks like nurturance and intense schooling from within the spiritual realm essential before my first incarnation on Earth? No. So let's go back. It seems he's asking existential questions about the state of his soul, the state of his current being, things that have happened in coming into being. Wow, my candles have burned quite low, and it is now 5 a.m. So let's pick a few more, and then we'll go ahead and take a break and start to discuss some other topics. And anyone in chat that would like to weigh in the Discord voice chat, let me know. And just if you've got anything to say about it, if you've got any comments, like, ooh, that's creepy even, or if there's anything you want to ask about or talk about, do feel free to speak up. Let's go ahead and say 100. Let's go ahead to 100. Let's go to the one before that because it seems like a continuation. Here we go. Yes. Okay. This seems like a big conversation. Here we go. Do individuals ever unbecome their true self in the core journey? Mary says no, but yes in 40 before core journey. I'm not sure what that means. Individuals better learning ability when they are young in something? No. I will say to you that it's not my way to play such foolish games. More something. Threads with him. I don't see his path in 30 as I do yours. Are you mad at me for indulging in this foolish games? No. I simply something he shouldn't try to make a judgment about you based on my willingness to something risk for him. Okay. And then just simply ectoplasm, no. So I'm guessing Mary, according to Mary, ectoplasm isn't a thing. Leaders will have to grant me permission. Can something go to library? Leaders will have to grant me permission. I shall ask. Do you want to ask? You don't have to. I really don't understand most of this. A lot of this I can't read. Something about the personality is affected. High horse. They see the perspectives in those in life review. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. No, let's go back and jump down to, say, 300. Okay. Are there things you can't say because it would ruin the surprise of them not being true? Yes. Reverse? Yes. So I'm assuming, are there things you can say because it wouldn't ruin it? Mozart does music in something. So does Newton or Einstein do physics in this place. They may. It looks like if they choose. Mark Twain write on Ouija board from, I'm guessing this is like a spirit realm or something. It is not for me to say. Is it annoying to talk to me? No. You simply speak of things of little import. Do you feel I should ask more things about true self? I can't say. I am not able to say what's more important. Okay. Is the soul an eternal body? I can't say. Is OBE or astral passage soul travel? No. Dreams seem to know ending of dream before I experience it. Is that true? The core knows these things out of time. I really don't understand what's going on here. Do they talk to each other as opposed to telepathic communication? No. So I'm guessing, okay. Are souls ever getting along great when our brains are in conflict? Yes. Okay. So this is some pretty interesting stuff, and apparently he has books that you can read. I highly encourage you to check out those books. I may definitely do that. But for now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll move on to discussing different paranormal topics. Feel free to weigh in chat. If you would like to be in voice chat, do let me know, and I will throw you into voice chat in Discord. And we will be right back after this break. Thanks for sticking with us. All right, we are back. Hello, everybody. So we've just finished all of our paranormal stories. Let me see if I've got a few left up my sleeve. If you guys haven't gotten sick of mine yet. Let's see. Okay. This is a good one. When I was living at home with my mom, I was, I believe, just 17 at this point. I was under a lot of stress. My mom and I didn't always get along. We fought constantly. So I had depression, I had anxiety, I had all this stuff going on. And I never cleaned my room. I couldn't find anything when it was clean. I didn't have the physical energy to clean it because I was so drained from everything and just depressed. So I never cleaned my room. So this was a point of argument between me and my mom often. And she would often come in my room to wake me up for school in the morning, even though I had an alarm, and see my messy room. And first thing off, wake me up out of sleep by yelling at me, right? And this is important for background. So on one such occasion that I'm asleep before school, I'm just laying there, and I think I hear my door open, and I hear the floor creak, because the floor was broken in a certain spot under the carpet, the concrete. And so you could kind of hear it shift a little bit and kind of scrape the broken concrete pieces. So I hear that, and then I feel someone sit on my bed well, before that, I'm just like waiting, obviously, like I hear that, and I'm waiting for her to start yelling at me, and I'm just keeping my eyes closed, trying to hold on the last few seconds of sleep. And so I feel someone sit on my bed, and I kind of roll toward it, and I think it's odd that she didn't yell at me yet, and that she chose to sit on my bed. And I open my eyes. It's completely dark. My alarm clock says it's 3 a.m. and there is no one, and my bedroom door is closed. And so I throw myself, like my bed is against the wall, so I throw myself up against the wall as flat as I can go, staring at that spot, scream bloody murder. And my mom and my brother come running in. My brother's already graduated at this point, and he's pissed because he loves sleeping in. And they come running in, and I cannot calm down, and I'm screaming, and I see the bed depression, right? But then I see it kind of lift up as they're standing there, and I'm like trying to point to it and get their attention, but by then there's nothing to see. And I finally managed to get it out, what happened, and my mom was unnerved. But, she told me to go back to sleep, and went to her, room, and went to go back to sleep after, telling me off about my room. But I could not sleep for the longest time. I had trouble sleeping in that room. And then another incident was later that same year, like a few months later, on my brother's birthday, which is November 1st, so Day of the Dead, when the veil is said to be, the thinnest. I'm getting ready for school. I am in the bathroom, and I'm doing my hair, and I hear my mom calling me, so I come out of the bathroom, and I'm like, what? Because she's like, yelling, and she looks really freaked out, and I'm like, what? And she goes, I just saw you come out of your room, which was across the hall from the bathroom. I just saw you come out of your room, look at me, because her bedroom was at the end of the hall, walk down the hall and turn into the living room, and I asked you what you're doing, and you didn't answer me, and you didn't come back. And I'm like, but I was in the bathroom. And she's like, I know you were, I just saw you come out of the bathroom. So I ran into the living room to see if there was another me, which is a bad idea. And there was no one. There was absolutely no one. And my mom was freaked out because she saw me come out of my bedroom, make eye contact with her, go down the hall, and turn into the living room. Now, why this isn't a good idea is because there's supposedly such a thing as a doppelganger. Now, a doppelganger is someone that looks like another person. And it's said that if you ever encounter your own doppelganger, if you see your own, face to face, if I had gone in that living room and seen myself, the saying goes, you'll die. Either right then and there you'll drop dead, or like very soon, and there's nothing you can do to stop it if you see your own doppelganger. So it's probably not a good idea to go chasing the living room after it, but I was like, no, absolutely not. Let's see. What else? I have quite a few, and I made some notes. I did the shadow in the attic. I did the nightmare about the shed. St. Augustine, here we go. For those of you that don't know, St. Augustine is a town, a city, if you will, in Florida in the United States, and it is the oldest in the United States. The Spanish founded it long before, the Pilgrims came over. The Spanish set foot in Florida and founded St. Augustine. And they still have the original fort. They still have a lot of historic stuff there. Like the oldest sites in the country are in St. Augustine. And as a child, I lived in Florida in Mayport, which is the military base in Jacksonville. Navy. My family is all sailors, all Navy. And so we lived in Mayport, and my mom and my dad thought it was a good idea to take us down to the fort in St. Augustine and, do the tour, look around, see the cannons, all that cool stuff, the historical shit. And, go to the Ripley's museum, the Ripley's Believe It or Not, which, by the way, I did as an adult, and it's still so fun. But so they take us down there, and I remember we get up to the top. We're going up to the top. We're at the level below the top, and I see a soldier, and I just think it's one of the workers there in, uniform, doing the tours and, dressing like the soldiers did. And he's sitting on one of the beds, like one of the cots in the barracks, and I'm looking at him, and I smile, and nobody's paying attention to him, which I think is weird, because if he's an employee, obviously people are going to be asking him questions about the fort. He might be giving a tour. He might be like, oh, you can't smoke in here, like nobody's paying him any attention. But I'm this little kid, and I'm looking at him, and I'm admiring his uniform and the shiny buttons, and he looks at me and he smiles, and I wave, and he waves back. And Mom says, come over here and look at this. And I'm like, but I want to ask the soldier something, because I was, a kid full of questions. And she goes, what soldier? And I turned around, and we were right at the door, so there was nowhere for him to go unless he wanted to jump out a window a couple stories down, right? We turn around, and he's not there. And, you can see the whole floor. You can see everybody in there, all the tourists with their cameras and the kids posing and stuff, taking family pictures. And there was no soldier there. And I'm like, Mom, you had to have seen him. He was the only one dressed up like a soldier, and he had the shiny buttons, and she's like, there was no one there, just shut up and get over here, And that's always kind of stuck with me, because I remember specifically seeing him. I remember the color of his uniform. I remember his, I was a little kid, so I loved the shiny buttons, and I was all about those buttons, and I collected buttons, and, But, I asked the kid next to me, and he said there was no soldier. I asked his mom, no soldier, and I was the only one that saw it. So I go back as an adult, right, with my husband. We're camping out at the park, where I used to play and go to the beach and stuff and have picnics and things like that and hike and all that shit. They have a campground, so we're camping there. It's just off the military base. And we go down to St. Augustine. And I don't know what possessed me to go in the lighthouse. I am terrified of heights, and I forgot it until I got up to the very top and felt like I was going to pitch over the edge. But I was in the bottom of the lighthouse, and I remember smelling smoke, like tobacco. And I'm looking around, because at this time I was a smoker. And I was like, oh, well, fuck yeah, I can smoke, right? But I didn't think there would be any smoking allowed in the lighthouse or on the premises, because I didn't see any ashtrays or anything, and I was pretty sure I saw no smoking sign. And I'm standing there, and there's an employee by the door, making, seeing all the people go in and out, and reminding you to sign the guest book as you turn off into the room on the left. And I'm looking around, I can't see anybody smoking, and I look at her, and I remember saying to my husband, are we allowed to smoke here? And I look at her, and I'm like, ma'am, are we allowed to smoke? And she goes, there's no smoking on the premises. I'm like, because I smell smoke, right? I smell somebody smoking. I smell tobacco. And I mean, that nicotine craving is hitting me hard, so I'm looking. And I don't see anybody. And I mean, it's sticking with me, and I don't know, something about it. It's just bugging me, and I keep asking people, have you seen someone smoking? And they're like, no. And so we finish. I didn't even know they had ghost tours at night. I didn't know that was a thing at the lighthouse. I didn't know it was supposedly haunted by the lighthouse keeper. And so we go home, and a couple months later, I'm watching Ghost Adventures, Zach Bagans and all that. I'm sure you guys are familiar. It's one of the more popular ghost shows. And they go to St. Augustine Lighthouse, and they're investigating it. And one of the employees there that they're interviewing says people will often smell pipe tobacco. And she says that anytime she forgets to mention something about the lighthouse keeper on one of their tours, she'll smell that pipe tobacco, and it's like his way of saying, hey, I'm here. And so I was like, weird, because I was smelling smoking, and that employee said there was no smoking anywhere on the premises, and I couldn't find anybody smoking. And so that was my little encounter with that. Whoa. Bareth coming in with 76 bits. Thank you. Very random number, but really, really appreciate that. Thank you so, so much. Look at you taking those hit points off Bear Cookie Squire. Nate 96MC. Hey Nate, how are you doing? I'm just finishing up some of my paranormal encounters I didn't get to earlier before I move on to our second part. I had to make it a 0 at the end. Nice. Well, thank you so much for the bits. I really, really, really appreciate it. So, thank you. Let's see, what else have I missed? There was an apartment we had in Indiana when I was a little kid, like 3, 4. I was verbal at this age, and I had my own room, and my mom had hung up my hats on the wall. They were like hats with flowers, like little straw ones, like little garden hats that you see, old ladies wear, but for kids. I remember I had this one purple hat with daisies on it and things like that, and one straw kind of hat with white, I guess, sash around it or something. Doing good. Yeah, I was listening, had experiences in my house regarding the supernatural. Ooh, if you feel like sharing them, please type them in chat and we will read them out. We love getting those stories. So she hung up those hats on little pegs on my wall above my bed, right? And they were really nice hats, and they were expensive, especially living on Navy salary. We couldn't really afford much, so she's like, don't mess with those hats. You wear them to church, you wear them for Easter, for family pictures, occasionally with my supervision playing dress up or having a tea party, but don't mess with those hats without my permission. So I remember one night I was going to take a nap, and I was all tucked up in my little pink blanket, and the hat started moving. Not just like moving, like they came off the pegs and they switched around. My daisy hat that was hanging up over here was suddenly hanging up down here. My my pink hat with the black bandana around it and the polka dots was suddenly in the center. It was like, that game where they have the cups and they're hiding like a shell or a ball under them. It was kind of like that. And I was watching them dance around. I'm like, that's weird. I don't think they're supposed to do that. But, I'm 3 and 4, and I'm like, cool. So then I take my nap and I wake up, and my mom's kind of pissed. She's like, have you been touching these hats? And I'm like, no. And she's like, they're moved around. So this to me validates I wasn't just seeing them. I wasn't misremembering their position. They were actually moving because she was pissed because I moved them, she thought. And I kept insisting, they moved on their own. And to this day, I still remember them moving. And it's only recently that she's been more open to that side because of the experiences she's had, like seeing me when I wasn't there, come out of my room and go into the living room when I was in the bathroom and all that other stuff, and that she's been more open to this kind of thing, and she's just now accepted that I have not messed with those hats as a kid. And so, yay, I'm 28 now, and I'm finally free of these crimes that I've been accused of. The last story I will share, sorry, I don't want to get choked up, I'm kind of tearing up, is one that I wasn't actually going to share without photographic proof, but I looked through my Facebook chat as far back as it could go, in my group chat where I talked about it. I looked through all of my saved pictures from my phone on my PC, on my external hard drive, everywhere. I even went so far as finding my old phone and charging it and looking through the gallery in every photo that I had, and I can't find it. So I'm thinking I'm just going to go ahead and share it without photographic evidence, and if you don't believe it, you don't believe it. I don't believe it myself half the time. And if it wasn't for me still having the knife and still having the scar, I wouldn't believe it, because I don't have the colander anymore. So I had a metal colander, or a sieve. It was steel, it was thick, it was sturdy. And I was in the townhouse, and I was in my kitchen, and I was gonna have my, monthly brunch with my friends, where we all get together and kind of potluck, bring stuff and eat and play board games like What Do You Meme and things like that. And so I was chopping strawberries because I was making little strawberry shortcakes. And I couldn't find my little knife, so I had this big cleaver, which I still have, and I'm tempted to go get from the kitchen so I can show you the chip and the point. And I had just washed the strawberries, and I set the knife in the colander, and I thought, I don't want my cat to startle me and me knock it off and hurt the cat or myself. So I pushed it back up against the wall, like this far from the edge of the counter, like this far, okay? And, and the knife was in it, and it was secure, and it was back against the wall. And I went to go get the other ingredients, like the sugar and the angel food cake cups and all that good stuff. And I was at the sink when I was chopping the strawberries, or washing the strawberries, and I felt like a wind go through. Like, our kitchen was in an L shape, and it had one entrance from the living room, and it went into the hallway that way. And I was at the sink right there by the hallway, and I felt a whoosh come in from the living room past me, like a strong wind, right? This was before I moved the strawberries back. So I moved the strawberries back against the wall, and I go to the fridge, which is over by the living room, and I hear this loud crash right behind me, and I feel something wet on my arm. And I turn and I look, and the colander is dented. The thick steel metal colander is dented on the floor. Strawberries spilled everywhere. Some of them hit the ground so hard they kind of left like strawberry paste on the tile. And the knife had punched through the metal colander, like one of the holes, punched through it. And you could see it bent outward and jagged where it had broken through the metal. And I still have the knife with the chip tip, and I look down at my arm. It's actually this arm. I've got a little scar right here. It's white now, so you can't really see it on camera, which was unfortunate. That was the other piece I was going to show for proof. There was a deep cut, and I was bleeding all down my arm and onto the tile. And so I started texting Hannah, who we heard a story from earlier, and Gigglebox, my brother's girlfriend, who we also heard a story from earlier. The three of us are close friends, and I started texting them, and they advised me to get out of the house, and I didn't have anywhere to go, and it was late at night, and I had to take my meds, so I couldn't drive. So I just sat in my car and listened to the radio in the parking lot for like hours, because I didn't want to go back in my house, and I was just dripping blood, and I was trying to decide whether or not to go to the hospital and get stitches. But again, we lived in the Pines, and it was like 30 minutes to the nearest town, and to the nearest hospital it was like an hour. Okay, so if something happened out there, you're screwed. And it was like middle of the night. So I ended up not going to the hospital and just kind of putting a cloth over it, a damp cloth to soak up the blood. And then once, it had stopped bleeding, I just kind of wrapped it up, and I didn't sleep for a while. I didn't sleep for a long while, and it still bothers me. And I still have the knife, and I may post the picture in Discord later today or tomorrow or sometime this weekend whenever I think about it. Show you the chipped knife and see if I can get a clear picture of my scar. But I don't have the colander because my husband saw it was all dented and punctured, and I was like, I don't know how this happened, but we should get a new colander, and he threw it out. But I was so certain I had taken a picture, and I spent all day yesterday going through the group chat looking for it. I couldn't find it. Hannah couldn't find it. Gigglebox couldn't find it. I went through my old phone. I went through all my hard drives. I know there's a photo, I just don't know where. So if I ever find it, I will post it for you guys. Okay, so Nate96MC. Let's see. Nate says, during the summer of either 2013 or 2014, my grandfather on my dad's family came up to visit, and all was well. At some point, I had the thought to ask if I could have his watch when he passes. No reason why, I didn't really question it, but he said yes. Fast forward to New Year's, and I heard that he passed. A few months later, I was in my room watching TV. I looked towards my window. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his arm. In the middle of the floor, I saw his arm with the exact watch. Oh, God, that's creepy. So it's like a disembodied limb? Or... I don't know. Either way, that's like disembodied limb. Oh my God. Like, grandfather or not, that would freak me out so bad. I would just not... Like, I shared a story about my grandfather earlier about how the night he passed, I had a dream of him pulling out the hotel chair at the desk, and I woke up like immediately after seeing that to see the desk chair pulled out exactly how it had been, and that gave me a nervous breakdown. So if I had seen a disembodied limb, oh my God, I would not have been able to handle that. Nope. I don't know how you managed. That's absolutely freaky. Maybe he just didn't have the energy to manifest completely and was just being like a, hey, I'm here and I remembered about the watch, kind of thing. But later I had gotten a mental message about his apologizing for not being in my life as he should have and all that. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. That's good. It's kind of closure, I guess. Yeah. Like with my grandfather, after that had happened and I had the nervous breakdown, and begged my husband to take me home from the hotel. I'd had a dream of him not saying anything, just kind of having this sad look on his face, and then I never felt him around again, never had dreams about him again or anything like that. So I guess he was in his own way apologizing for scaring me or whatever, but he had never really been in my life either the way he should have been. I broke off contact with him. He never stood up for me against his wife, who is still alive and I swear is the devil. And yeah, so I think it's nice that we can have these kind of encounters where we get some sort of resolution, with a past or departed loved one. So it's a really terrifying experience, but I'm glad that you were able to get some sort of closure afterward. It's a really, really special experience. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through this because I don't see Roving Bear here, and I know he wanted to be part of this, but he's not here, so I'm just going to move on because it is 5:30 in the morning already. The candles are burning low, and I've got my brother-in-law to go see. So the first topic is psychics, whether people believe in them or not. Feel free to weigh in and chat. Absolutely. Okay, there's a weird shadow on my ceiling. I'm just gonna ignore that. You know what? I got a phone. It kind of looks like a person. I'm just gonna take a picture real quick. Freaky as hell. There we go. Okay, I'll examine that later. Just lock that away. Unpack that with my therapist. Alright, so psychics, if they're possible or not. Boop. So there are different kinds of, I guess you could say, psychics. Oh, let's see what this is. My brother and I were in the basement talking about things when I heard someone clearly saying my name in between the floor. Went up to my mom's room. We asked her if she'd call me, but she didn't. Oh. So is this where he was apologizing, or is this the second experience? Alright, let me rush through this real quick and I'll circle back. So there's different kinds of psychics. People who can actually see things, people who have an intuition of knowing things, people who feel things, hear things, basically any of the five senses and some extra ones. Five senses. So tired. Basically any of the five senses plus some extra ones. I'm not sure how much I believe in psychics. I've only known of two that have actually kind of really gotten my interest. Actually one psychic and one medium, so it's kind of different things. Well, I guess he was a medium too. But my point is, like with clairsentience, the feeling, the empathic sense of emotions, or the claircognizance, the intuitive, inner knowing kind of feeling. Second experience. Okay, good. I'll read that after this then. It's not that far-fetched to me because people kind of have this inborn sixth sense, this intuition, like mothers knowing when something's wrong with their children. Unfortunately, I knew a family where the daughter had been in a car accident, and I was sitting there with her mother. We were waiting for her to come over, and I didn't know them that well. They were just kind of neighbors, and we occasionally like grilled together and stuff, you know, or just chatted together at the mailbox, or, you know, neighborly stuff, you know. We weren't like best friends or close or anything like that, or having them over for dinner every day or anything, but she kind of we were waiting for her daughter to get over, and we were sitting outside, and she kind of just got this look on her face, and I'm like, what? And she's like, something's not right. And I'm like, did you leave the oven on or something? Because we were supposed to be having lunch. That's why we were waiting on her daughter. And she's like, no, I just got this really bad feeling. And I'm like, did you like forget something? Did you have like a work deadline? Did you lose something important? You know, just trying to help her kind of get through ideas and stuff. And she's like, I don't know, something feels wrong, something feels really wrong. And she was getting more and more upset, like more agitated and distressed. And I forgot to say, her daughter was coming back from college, so it was a long drive and on interstates and stuff, and she just didn't really, you know, look well. And then, you know, her daughter didn't show up, and we're like, oh, I guess she's late, whatever. So, you know, I get a little plate and I take it home, and, you know, I'm waiting for my mom to get off work. And then my mom gets off work late, and she comes in and she looks upset, and I'm like, what's up? And she's like, you know the neighbor? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, her daughter got in a car accident on her way up from college, and she died. And I was like, and it was about the same time that we were waiting on her, that she was sitting there thinking, you know, something's wrong, I don't feel well, something's not right, that her daughter was actually pronounced dead on the scene. So things like that, or like, you know, when you meet a person, you feel something off about them. I think to an extent, definitely there is a case for psychics. As far as believing all of them, not really. I go in with a healthy amount of skepticism, so I don't know. I guess the two that I believe are mediums, which is completely different. They communicate with the other side rather than having some sort of clairvoyance or claircognizance or whatever. So rather than them having premonitions or feelings or something like that, they communicate with the other side or know things that have happened in the past. That's completely different. So I guess as far as psychics go, I haven't actually known of one that I believe, but I believe there's something to it. Barrett says, I think there's truth in all, but it's, more of a Sixth Sense style connection. I also think it's more on animals, etc. Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. I think it is more animal, but also I think we're also kind of born with this instinct, this kind of sixth sense like I've been talking about, as kind of just like a primitive thing, because it was a way of survival, back in caveman times or whatever, to kind of be aware of when something was dangerous. Like when there was a predator watching you, you would know, you would kind of get this feeling of being watched, that they've actually traced back to, like, being stalked by a predator, like a predator animal or something like that. It was a way of survival. It was a survival instinct. So I do believe that up to a certain point. So psychics, for me, jury's still out. I do believe it's like more of a sixth sense thing. Mediums, on the other hand, I only know of 2 that I've actually been convinced. So that's a completely different thing. What else is next? Next on the list is aliens. Everyone's favorite topic. I think personally, and also according to people like Carl Sagan, that it is scientifically and mathematically not just probable, but likely that there are other intelligent beings in the universe besides us. We cannot be the only intelligent life forms that ever exist. As to whether or not they visited, I'm not saying I don't believe it, but I'm not saying I believe it either. I'm kind of, I need a lot of convincing. I go in with a healthy amount of skepticism. I don't really jump and think aliens or people have been abducted or whatever. They might have come and been like, screw this, these people are not intelligent enough. I mean, yeah. Definitely can't prove one way or another exactly. I mean, I don't really see convincing evidence that they haven't been here, but I haven't seen convincing evidence that they have, so it's kind of, I definitely believe that they exist somewhere in the universe, but again, whether or not they've actually been here, I'm not so certain. But yeah, I'm kind of with Barrett on this. They probably came over and they're like, no thanks. They have less than half our intelligence and they're very murdery. So they're just like, nope, not out of here. But I've taken astrobiology classes online at the University of Edinburgh. Edinburgh? How do you guys say it? I don't know. But I have taken astrobiology classes online there. And let me tell you, I was gypped. I was thinking we were going to theorize about aliens and intelligent life and all this shit. Nope. We learned about bacteria in space and microorganisms. We learned about how life started here with different kinds of how the atmosphere evolved into a breathable gas. The geological composition of other planets, as well as the atmospheric composition. We learned about all the boring shit, and I'm like, I want to talk about aliens. So I was kind of led astray with that. But I do have this case to present. Back in the 70s, they sent the Voyager. And on the Voyager, I think it was Carl Sagan actually who came up with it, a way to communicate to the aliens what we were and where we were. There was our DNA, where it showed the 23 pairs of chromosomes. It showed, what we looked like in proportions. It showed where we were located in the galaxy, and so on and so forth. And then I don't remember when, but a while later, there was a crop, I don't want to say circle because it wasn't a circle, a crop design that seemed to be in reply that showed their DNA, their genetic pairings, their proportions, their, all that stuff. And in fact, here is what it is. This right here on the right is what we sent. You can see our proportions and stuff. And there on the left is what was left in the crop formation. There's apparently 9 differences. Silicon inserted into the table of atomic numbers. I believe, we had the atomic elements for like carbon because we're carbon-based life and things like that. There was an additional strand of DNA. There's a change in the number of nucleotides, and then you can see their head was larger in proportion to their body. There was a change in their population value, changes in the solar system info, representation, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it seemed to be a response, and you could call it a hoax, but it was a very clever hoax, and they would have had to have extensive knowledge of what was put on the Voyager, which not many people, in public were like, on the up and up about. Like, they knew that we put in information on the Voyager. They knew we sent it out. That was that. But to have it broken down like this and laid out like we had laid it out is kind of suspect. Here's another view of it. That's ours on the left and theirs on the right. So, you can see all the differences there. Similar group of formulas for sugar and nucleotide bases in the DNA. The DNA structure with the crops version having additional strands. So they had an additional strand of DNA. So whereas where we had 2, they had 3. I believe that's how it went. It showed their population, their species height and build, the planets in the solar system, all of that. It was kind of, that's the one that really gets me, is because, again, for someone to have made it this accurately the way that was laid out, they would have either had to have worked with NASA or Carl Sagan or worked on the Voyager or put it, they would have had to have first-hand knowledge. I mean, again, this is the 70s. It's not like you can go on the internet and Google it, This is what it was, and they didn't just like throw these things up on TV. They're like, oh, we put this in there, we told them about our solar system and our DNA and things like that, and they just gave you like a basic rundown and then let it go. And it's not exactly like it was going to make evening news, maybe it did in some places, I don't know, but it's kind of a very niche interest even for the 70s. So to have it laid out that specifically, that precisely in response, is kind of suspect. But other than that, I've not seen really much else convincing. Not much else. Again, I do believe that it is scientifically and mathematically not only probable but likely that they exist. But whether or not they've been here, this is the only evidence I can't blatantly refute, and I'm kind of like, the only evidence that kind of gives me pause. Barrett says, what we are murdering angry mobs of 2-legged creatures willing to destroy everything. You know what? That is fact. I mean, I bet they came over, they saw us dropping the atomic bomb testings over in Nevada, or is it New Mexico? And they were just like, no thanks, bye. They tend to stab anything that looks different from them. I'm gonna just nope on back home. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. So, next on the list, shadow people. What are they? In the paranormal community, there's been a lot of back and forth about this. It's not ghosts that appear as dark figures. They're legitimate shadow people. Nate says, yeah, that's hard to disprove of someone doing it. But if it's aliens, proof have yet to be seen other than that. Exactly. Other than that, I really haven't seen anything really jumping out as, hey, this is good, solid evidence. Anyway, circling back to shadow people, it's not ghosts that appear as shadows, or ghosts that appear as dark figures. It's something that is a completely different entity. They're believed to have ill intent, and some even posit they're from another dimension coming in towers. So we're gonna flip on back over to this, and I have another thing. Is it? Nope. Here we go. The dark shadow people. Let's see. Here we go. Shadow people have been around since the beginning of time and are a dark influence upon society. Heidi Hollis. She's an author of several books about shadow people. She said, and it appears that these beings have in fact been around throughout history, as descriptions of shadowy human-like figures have appeared in folklore dating back to ancient times. For example, the Quran mentions pitch-black sapient beings that aren't entirely spiritual or physical, and people in ancient Europe reportedly believed that shadow beings, quote, desired blood and without it couldn't be reborn. And in modern times, reports from people claiming to have seen these beings themselves come from all over the world. Most of these shadow creatures appear through our periphery vision, and people who see them are often unable to describe in detail the features of these mystical entities, apart from their human-like forms and the occasional reports of fiery red eyes. Similarly, in Hollis's book about shadow people titled The Secret War, she describes them as dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles that flicker in and out of peripheral vision, but it appears that people have begun to see shadow people in more detail in recent times. Perhaps because the beings are, for whatever horrifying reasons, making themselves seen. More and more people are beginning to see them straight on and for longer periods of time, explained ThoughtCo on its website, which also notes the appearance of red eyes on the shadow beings being prevalent. There are, of course, many theories about where shadow people come from and whether or not they're even real. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about them. I've known people who have claimed to have seen them, usually out of the corner of their eye. Some of them have seen them walk through their room, just walk right past them. And they said it's humanoid, and there's really no distinguishing features like a shape of a nose or a chin or anything like that. It's just human shape. And if they ever see the red eyes, which I've only known one person on one instance to have ever claimed to have seen their eyes, it's red. So, circling back to the mediums, the two mediums that I have actually been convinced of, one of them talks about shadow people and claims that they are from a different dimension than our own. And whether or not they need blood to be reborn, as they thought in ancient Europe, they are not good beings. They try and influence people to harm themselves or others, even influencing them to take their own life or take the life of other people. They seem to act like, oh, we're your friends, come with us, do this and you can be with us, kind of thing, and while encouraging you to harm yourself. They prey on young and vulnerable people. I will admit, I myself have seen dark figures out of the corner of my eye, thought it was me being messed up, told my therapist, up to my meds, still saw them. And then on one occasion in my life, I was sitting middle of the day on my couch watching the TV right there, TV over there, and I have an opening on this side of the couch and an opening on this side of the couch. That one goes in the breakfast nook, that one goes in the dining room, and the kitchen is in between them, behind the wall that's the couch is against. So it's kind of like a loop. And I saw a shadow figure come out of the breakfast nook, cross in front of me in the TV, and go into the kitchen, or the dining room. And I was like, what the fuck was that? So I get up and I go into the dining room, and there's nothing there. I look in the kitchen and I see it, and it just stops and then goes out the wall into the backyard. And I don't follow it after that. I'm like, if it goes through the wall, it goes through the wall. I'm going back and watching TV and pretending this never happened. Red eyes. I had something in my house that wasn't human, Nate says. I had seen it in my kitchen. The head was a skull with red eyes. Ooh. So, this does say people are seeing shadow people with greater detail. So it could be a shadow person in greater detail, or it could be an entity presenting itself as a shadow person to try and intimidate you. Either way, that's not something I would want to stick around and see. That's definitely creepy. Is it in the current house you're living in, or a past house? Why is it always the kitchen, I wonder? Because I've seen that shadow figure in the kitchen. I've had the experience where I got cut with a knife in the kitchen. I got hit with a bourbon bottle off of a tall shelf where it was against the wall, flew off it and hit me in the head and almost knocked me the fuck out in the kitchen. And this is probably just coincidence, but in my head I'm like, is there something about kitchens? And there was the shadow thing in the attic that I told you guys about, so I don't know. I'm not sure that I like it. And I have a vague memory as a small child in that apartment in Indiana of seeing, a bunch of shadows and playing with them and them telling me to drink from the bottles under the bathroom sink, which I knew I shouldn't do because my mom told me not to. And them getting upset with me because I wouldn't drink them so that I could come play with them. So I don't know if this was just like a nightmare I had or if it actually happened, but I don't want to find out. My brother had a priest come and bless the house. After he finished the prayer, I had felt wind going past me up the stairs, and I'm assuming leaving the house. Me and my brother felt something darker in the basement where it resided during the day. Ooh. Basements creep me out. I don't really have a basement. I have kind of like a downstairs lower level, but it's kind of like a basement, it's only partially underground. One side of it's underground, the other side can be accessed from the backyard, and I won't even go in there very much. Definitely not alone. Like, I only go down there if my husband is home and going down with me, or I never go down there alone. I don't know. Something about basements being in the ground, I don't know. Definitely creepy as hell. But as for shadow people, I don't know what they are. I believe it's possible they're from another dimension, because I'm about to address alternate dimensions in our last topic of the night, and the possibility of that from a scientific and supernatural standpoint, paranormal. But creepy stuff. Could have been something more dark than the shadow people. True. It could be demonic if you believe in demons. It could be. There's always that possibility. So for our last topic of the night, because it is 6 in the morning now, and I am very hungry, and I've got fake blood on me, and I'm supposed to go see my husband's family in like an hour. So for the last topic of the night, morning, parallel universes. Are they possible? I honestly believe so. Now, This is about the Hadron Collider and how they're, trying to recreate a Big Bang and all this other stuff. And they're talking about the possibility of reaching or peeking into or creating parallel dimensions with this. This isn't the specific article I had read on that, but it was the closest I could find in a time crunch because I didn't think about it until I was about to stream. But they had posited the theory that they would likely be able to reach, in some form or fashion, even if it was just a glimpse, a parallel universe relatively soon using the Hadron Collider. Honestly, I think this is just a recipe for disaster. I also got kicked out of a class because I was anti-Hadron Collider because I was really upset about some of the things they were doing, and I'm like, you're just gonna create a fucking black hole and doom us all. And I had science to back it up, but I was a little overzealous in presenting it and very fervent in my belief that they would create a black hole and, just basically fuck us all up. And so I got invited to leave the classroom. The reason why my brother brought a priest in to bless the house, just in case. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I had any even slightest hint that there might be something demonic in my house, priest is coming in. Absolutely, 100%. Blessing the house, I'm saging it, I'm throwing holy water, I'm spraying tar water in the corners, I'm burying medallions in all four corners of my property, I'm sealing that shit up, absolutely not dealing with that. Yeah. As far as me and my beliefs, not messing with that. My house is in fact around 100 years old, so yeah. Ooh. Are you in Europe by any chance? Because I've noticed that Europeans tend to keep buildings a lot longer than Americans do. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are people who live in houses that were like around the Revolutionary War, or Civil War, so it's been like hundreds of years and stuff, but those are few and far between and well maintained. But mostly we don't have a lot of houses that old. I mean, the oldest house I've ever known of is the house I'm in right now, like personally, other than the yellow house we bought, which was built in 18 something. We almost bought that one. USA, Massachusetts. See, there you go. New England has so much old stuff. I actually did talk about some things that had happened to me in Boston and Salem earlier in the stream. I absolutely love Massachusetts, and I love Salem, and I love Boston, but you can't deny that there is a certain creepiness about Massachusetts. Even when I had my Nana living in Boston, I did not really like spending a whole lot of time there. But yeah, New England, I got you, man. But yeah, like I was saying, the oldest house, other than the one we almost bought, the yellow house that was built in like the 18 something, is the house we're in now, which was built in 1986. So 80s. Yes, but it's affordable. Most of my mom's family lives here, though. There, yeah. I had a lot of family that lived in Boston, some that lived in Detroit. All of my existing family, except for my dad's side, I don't claim, lives in Seattle right now, and there's a lot of old houses and old sacred Native American land in Washington, so it's, yeah, I get you. Pacific Northwest and New England, oh, no doubt there is a lot of freaky shit happening there, and Louisiana. But, right, I keep going off on tangents. Okay, so, bottom line, scientifically possible, about the alternate dimensions. And I encourage you to look that up about, it was an article that did come out very recently about, how they not only believe in the possibility, they believe in it as almost fact now that there are other dimensions. So, and this one is a very long read, but I'm going to go ahead and end the stream by reading it. And I'm going to share the link in chat, and I encourage you guys to come here and check it out for yourselves. It's one of my absolute favorite stories about alternate dimensions. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't know whether it's true or not, but if you want something going for it, this guy does choose to remain anonymous because he claims he's not in it for the fame. He just wants answers. So that kind of lends slight credibility. But again, I listened to this so-called Beatles music, and it just sounds like he mashed up a bunch of their old songs together. So I don't know. His story in and of itself does sound plausible. But again, the evidence he presents just doesn't seem plausible to me. It sounds like he did just mash up a bunch of their old songs together. Okay, so the following is an actual account of my experiences as of recently. Because of the nature of what has happened, I must remain anonymous until I feel it is safe to reveal my real name, but for now you can refer to me as James Richards. On September 9th, 2009, I experienced something that I am still having trouble believing happened to me. I came into the possession of a cassette tape containing a Beatles album that was never released. In fact, not only was it never released, but it was recorded many years after they broke up. And no, I'm not talking about Klaatu. Is that even how you say it? Now, this is where the story becomes slightly more unbelievable, and it's almost embarrassing to attempt to explain the incident to you for fear of viewing me as completely absurd. I must assure you I'm not insane or on drugs, and hopefully the audio from this tape will be enough proof that there is more than we think out there. Again, I listened to it. To me, it sounds like he mashed up a bunch of their old stuff together. Check it out for yourself. You can see it over here on the left. Okay, so I live in Livermore, California, but on September 9th I was driving home from Turlock after visiting a friend for a few days. I had my dog with me, and I didn't have any plans for the day, so I decided to take a drive through a place called Del Puerto Canyon just west of Turlock. This is a scenic road that is a fun drive and actually goes through to Livermore. I hadn't taken a cruise through it for a while, so I thought I would take this way home. It was about 2 p.m. A ways into the canyon, my dog started acting like she needed to use the restroom, so I pulled over to the first available parking area to the side of the road and let her out while I stretched. At first I didn't notice, but then I heard the barking from 30 yards away. My dog was chasing a rabbit. Now, my dog is a pretty good dog, but if she is chasing something, then there's no stopping her, so the only thing I could do was become part of the chase. They already had about 40-yard head start, so I really had to book it. Or I had to really book it, whichever. The uneven ground and soft dirt patches made it difficult to run, and it wasn't very far into the chase I had stepped in a rabbit hole, fell, and knocked myself unconscious. Now, anybody who lives in the US knows that the second you're unconscious in the desert, it's over for you. You're fucked. It's over. When I woke up, I was in a room with some furniture and electronics in it. I was taken care of with a bandage on my head, but I still felt uneasy about the situation because where I fell and hit my head was in a very rural, unpopulated area with no houses. And outside the window of the room I was in, I could hear traffic. I wasn't near the window in the room. It was actually on the other side next to an unusual looking electronic machine that I didn't recognize from anywhere I've seen before. The only reason this stood out was because it seemed out of place in a person's home, which most of the room resembled. I decided to get up and look out the window, but the door opened and in ran my dog, who was pretty excited to see me. When I looked up, there was a man standing at the door. He was about 6 feet tall and had medium long black hair and was dressed casually in dressed casually nice, but gave me a greasy vibe. Goodness, I'm tired. If you know what I mean. He introduced himself as Jonas and asked me if I was okay, which I said yes. He said he found me unconscious in a field with my dog barking at me, so I thanked him for helping me and my dog out, and that I was surprised my dog even came back to me. I then asked him the question that would make me start wondering if I in fact had gone crazy. I asked him, "Where am I?" "About 20 feet away from where I found you," he replied. I told him that couldn't be possible because there were no houses within at least 20 miles from where I last remember being. He then told me that what he was going to say next would be very shocking and unbelievable, and that if he didn't actually experience it himself, then he wouldn't believe it. He took a look at the machine near the window and looked back at me and said he transported me into parallel Earth. He said he traveled to our Earth dimension and found me knocked out in the blazing heat with nobody around to help me out. Normally, he said he doesn't take outsiders through a portal, but in my case, he thought I needed urgent help. I immediately started asking questions about traveling to parallel worlds, since all I knew about the topic was YouTube videos of Mikio Kaku. I guess is his name. Who knows? He told me to slow down and that he would explain himself. Apparently, in this world, a parallel travel machine can be purchased quite easily, while not cheap. It's pretty popular, even though the machine can be dangerous enough to cause death. In the 1950s of his dimension, the government was faced with a decision to continue to fund a space program, I'm guessing NASA, or a parallel dimension program called ARP-D. I can't remember what he said it stood for, but I'm pretty sure the PD is for parallel dimensions, and I remember the acronym because I noticed it on a lot of the electronics in the room I was in. He then explained that the real danger of using one of the machines was exploring new dimensions. Since there are an infinite amount of Earths in other dimensions, only a small amount have been explored. The problem with exploring in dimensions is the chance you will die somehow once you walk through the portal doorway. He told me that people die from falling, if the ground isn't close enough to where the portal opens, die from drowning, there are worlds covered in water and hard to reopen the portal underwater, die from fire, atmospheric issues. He said in order for people to avoid this, they would have to know that there would be a similar ground in the dimension they were traveling to. So his government began to research worlds that were safe to transport to, even creating public spots where people could choose a menu of worlds to go to that were all safe. Many of these worlds were lush vegetation worlds that were never ruined by man, only to be invaded by the large overcrowded population of the travelers' world. He said something about new industries that opened up because of this, one of them being something like dimensional life brokers. These people offer the chance to live as someone new in an already established similar world that doesn't know of dimensional travel, nor that there are people crossing the dimensional border too. Jonas said he was an explorer for one of the dimensional travel agencies and was looking in new uncharted dimensions and came up my Earth. A lot of talking today. We talked about a lot of things. It was interesting to see what similarities and differences we have between worlds. Foods, culture, TV, technology, we covered a lot. We also started talking about music, which was an interesting topic because there were many of the same bands between our worlds that existed, including the Beatles. When their name got brought up, Jonas mentioned that his brother just got back from seeing them perform at a concert recently, which I gave a weird look to and said, "You mean they're still together?" And he said, "Yeah." Then I told him about how they broke up in our world and that John and George passed away. Apparently in his world, they're all alive, healthy, and still on tour. Jonas then had me follow him into another room that had a bookshelf-looking thing with some cassette tapes. Yes, the music one. Apparently CDs never caught on in this world. And a large tape player, radio, record player, though it didn't quite look like the type of radios we have. The speakers looked more like crinkled cardboard, but sounded pretty good. I didn't get too good of a look at the speakers, but they certainly weren't round. They almost looked like a tall accordion. The only Beatles album he had was store-bought and had real cover art with Sgt. Pepper's, which the cover looked slightly different than the one we have, but the songs were all the same. The other 6 Beatles tapes he had were all like somebody recorded them onto a blank cassette for him and wrote the song titles on a card slipped in the case. A couple of the album titles written on the tapes I recognize, but there were about 4 that I had never heard of before. He played a few songs from one of them, which was totally surreal to hear the Beatles music that was never made, at least in our world. We talked a little about it. He said some girl made the tapes for him while he was in upper school, what they call high school. She was a huge fan of them and wanted him to listen to them. He popped out the first tape and was putting in the second when I told him he should record me a copy of one so I could take it back with me, thinking it wouldn't be a big deal. Well, the look Jonas gave me when I said this part of the reason I am remaining anonymous. Not only did it sort of scare me, but it had a very serious, almost creepy look to it, followed by the phrase, not word for word, I can't remember exactly what he said, no. You are not to take anything with you back to your world. No pictures, no souvenirs, no tapes, nothing. I asked him why, and he wouldn't really say except that for my safety I wasn't to take anything back. Of course, I'm not the type of person to go through all of this parallel world stuff and not grab something to prove the outrageous story of my experience. So for the moment I told him I wouldn't take anything and changed the subject. About an hour later, after some more talking, I heard a doorbell ring and he left the room to check the door. I knew that I may not have another chance to take something, so I grabbed one of the tapes and put it in my pocket, and then shuffled the tapes around to make it look less obvious that something was missing. When he came back and said I was kind of hungry, just to get us out of the room. I mixed up the tapes a little, so it was hard to tell one was missing, but I didn't want to be there when he found out. So he then took me to the other room and fed me. For the most part, the food tasted like ours, but was different product names and colors. The purple ketchup was strangest. We talked a little bit more and then expressed the notion that I should be going because it was getting late. The time of day was identical to ours, as it is all worlds. We met back in the room with a machine in it. I grabbed my dog and shook Jonas's hand for taking care of me after I was knocked out. I thanked him again and stepped through the portal, which felt like getting wet but staying dry the entire time. Really weird. When I put my dog on the ground, she even shook herself like she thought she was wet. Back in our world, I could see my car on the road, and there was a straight line burn mark on the ground from where the portal had shown up. It was dark outside, and the only reason I noticed the burn was because it was still smoking from the heat. I walked back to my car, didn't run this time, and drove home. The worst part was I couldn't even listen to the tape on my way home because I didn't have a tape player in my car. I actually wasn't even able to listen to it at home either for the same reason. I had to go to Walmart to buy a tape player just to listen to it. Unfortunately, I don't have any information about the tape other than what is written on the card sleeve. The track names were written, as well as the album title, Everyday Chemistry. Everything else about it is as mysterious to you as it is to me. It also wasn't like I could have asked the guy anything about it, especially after taking it from him. I'll post some more about my experience in the coming days, but I have to go to work right now and this post is already long enough. If anyone has any questions they want to ask me about this incident, then I've set up an email address that you can contact me at. The Beatles Never Broke Up at yahoo.com. I'll try and answer everyone's questions as best possible. Lastly, if there's anyone out there that has experienced anything like this, then please contact me. Some of the things this guy said to me almost make me wonder if this isn't the first time dimensional travelers have been here. James Richards. Now, one of the things that struck me is a strange thing to have struck me. It's the purple ketchup. Now, whether or not you guys know this, there is a variety of tomato that is dark purple. I can't remember the name of it, but it is dark purple. And so it made me think, red and purple aren't that far off on the color spectrum, and even there are purple tomatoes here, so purple ketchup isn't very far-fetched. It's not like it's a neon purple or something like back here. It could be a dark purple, kind of like this black shirt, but purplish in the light, It could be coming from a purple variety of tomato. And, I see that as pretty likely. So, blow out that one. Because it's dripping all over my desk now, and I gotta clean that up. But, the link's right there in chat for you guys. Make up your own mind. Again, to me, the music just sounds like he mixed a bunch of Beatles songs together, but I only listened to, 1.5 songs before I kind of gave up. But the detail in the story, the things he said, it kind of, to me, gives me pause, because what if we went the other direction? Instead of funding NASA, decided to fund this? I mean, they don't tell the public everything, so maybe this was an option on the table and we just took the other direction. Purple ketchup, possibility. There are purple tomatoes in this world. There are. And it's entirely possible that the Beatles still could be together in a world. You never know. But, and also, when he was talking about how in certain Earths, you know, the ground is much lower or higher than it is in their Earth, and so that being a danger, or them opening up a portal into water or underwater. I mean, these seem like very real concerns you would have if this was a thing. So while the story to me gives me pause, the evidence he proves to me, the evidence he provides is less convincing than his story. So again, there's the link. Go check it out. Make up your own mind. I have not seen any other posts from this person at all, which makes me kind of, have that paranoid bit in the back of my head. Did something happen to him after he posted this? Did the guy realize, shit, my tape is missing, come here, see this dude posted this, and was like, son of a bitch, and come after him? Did the government have some questions? Did some other group of people have questions and, come at him? Or was he just, batshit insane and got bored with his hoax and decided not to post anything else? I don't know. But, I have not seen another post from him. He's got pictures of the tape, the supposed scorch mark in the ground, the place where he was knocked out, and then he's got all these tracks for you guys to listen to, and you can download it for free. Yeah. And that's that. There was never any reveal about his identity. There was never any reveal about what else happened, any other thing he learned, any follow-ups, nothing. This was just, everything right here is it. So I invite you to kind of go take a look yourself and make up your own mind and see what you think about it. And so 3 hours and 20 minutes in, oh dear God, at almost 6:30 in the morning, and I've got like half an hour maybe to go before I gotta go and see my husband's family, and his brother came into town and shit. And I'm covered in fake blood and have fangs, and just came off of a whole conspiracy rant and paranormal things. So if you guys like this, do let me know in Discord. Here's a link to that if you haven't joined already. Let me know what you thought about it, if you want this to be a thing that I do again sometime, with other paranormal stuff or more stories or what have you. Let me know, and I'll see about making this a weekly or a bi-monthly or a once a month thing or whatever. We'll work that out. So thank you everybody for coming and joining in the stream. Thank you, Barrett, for the bits. Much appreciated, sir. Thank you to JD Hugh for the follow, Slaughter Camp for the follow, Mothman is Real 99 for the follow. You guys are amazing, and thank you also Slaughter Camp and Mothman is Real. I'm assuming Mothman is Real is Tiny Mothman from Reddit, the story we shared, and Slaughter Camp, again, here is his, here is his Twitch. And thank you again, Nate, for sharing your awesome stories. Those were unsettling, but I liked them, so thank you so much. If you've got more, feel free to share them in Discord or message me and let me know if you guys want more of these streams. So thank you everybody for coming in. Thank you everybody who shared a story. whether you allowed me to share your story from Reddit or you messaged me one. And until next time, I don't know when I'll stream again, probably Monday with a video game or something. And until then, stay safe and sane, everybody. And watch out for the spooky stuff. And if anything spooky happens, let me know. I want to know. We'll see you Monday. Bye, everybody.